It's all yours,
Yeah,
SFT.
I'm here. I'm just typing. So
Hey,
I don't
thanks so
wanna
much, guys. This is Standing for Truth coming to you tonight. We've got a discussion. We've got Jeremy here. We've also got Snake was right. So we're going to have these two gentlemen discuss a few different topics. Sounds like we're going to be discussing the flood, some radiometric dating, maybe speciation, and biblical kinds. So we're going to keep it fun. We're really looking forward to this one. Just for the audience sake as well, announcement. We did have a debate a couple nights ago on the chromosome 2 fusion between myself and Speed of Sound. It's getting good feedback. People seem to be enjoying it. So if you haven't yet seen it, please check it out. But that being said, we're going to jump right into this one. Jeremy, who's obviously the creationist. People know him from debating and being in our live streams before. And Snake was right as well, who needs no introduction. He's debated here many times, and he's been on our channel for many discussions as well. So Snake was right. Thanks for joining us as well. And we'll get right into it. I'll hand it over to Jeremy and Snake. Start however you please.
So, Snake, what do you want to tackle? Your favorite? The order of the fossils, or do you want me to ask you questions? Up to you.
Well, it sounded like you probably had some questions. I have some questions for you too.
So we'll start.
Mainly based on speciation, though, so maybe it would be better to save those for later.
I thought flood would be the first one. Well, anyway, it's okay. We could talk. You mean rapid speciation after the flood?
Yeah.
So you're gonna ask, what's your question?
Well, if we're saving that for rapid speciation, I guess my main problem with the flood. Oh man, I mean, it's hard to pick what the main one is, but I guess it would be how could the order of the fossils be so consistent worldwide when we know that floods just mix things up?
Because you're assuming the flood is a huge tidal wave, right? You're assuming. Sorry.
Isn't that how it carves the mountains, though?
Erosion, post-flood erosion, carved the mountains. It also carved the Grand Canyon, and there are other things that carved. I'm not sure if carved is the correct English. There are other factors that created the mountains, and it is the collision of plates, uplifting of the mountains, collision of plates. Okay.
Yeah, so my understanding is that it was catastrophic land change due to tidal waves and earthquakes, and that the life forms would have been buried almost instantly. So that seems to me like a very chaotic and not organized system.
Like I said, the flood did not start with a tidal wave. It started like just let's say the Indonesian tsunami. It started that low. It didn't start off with 50-foot to 100-foot waves. 50-foot to 100-foot waves were during the middle stages, about 50-foot waves, and the later stages, 100-foot waves, something like that. It's a more or less, but I don't remember the exact figures. It depends upon the crossbeds we see, because at the Grand Canyon we do see crossbeds that are kind of like 100 feet. I think you know this. I'm not sure if you know this. So we could infer that the 100-foot tidal wave at the end of the flood, at the peak of the flood, if you understand catastrophic plate tectonics, because catastrophic plate tectonics did not start very chaotic. It started slow and gradual, just like your evolutionists love to state. It started slow and gradual.
So how did the animals get rapidly buried in that stage?
Well, we've already talked about this before. You remember that the fountains of the Great Deep, which was written by the Bible, waters came out of it, magma, and there are rocks from the crust and the mantle coming up. Okay, so the first wave of tsunamis would be maybe just like the Indonesian tsunami, and then it will bury the shallow marine creatures first, because right, they are at the beach. Shore. Which beach or shore? I'm confused. Sorry.
Same thing.
Yeah. Same thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. My English is yeah. That's so they will be buried first.
But how, if it's moving slowly, how are they getting buried?
It's moving, but because those waters are carrying sediments, and at the beach shore there are sands already, right?
Hmm.
And so when they get dragged, when these animals being dragged with when these shallow marine creatures were dragged, they're also being dragged by sand from the beach, from the shallow water, and there are also sand at the beach, right? So that's it.
So how do we explain the fact that there are beaches above several so-called flood layers?
What do you mean?
There's even entire reefs that are like 100 miles long that are undisturbed on top. So that would require the flood to lift up this 100-mile wide piece of rock and coral and just
Yeah.
gingerly place it on top of the stuff that it's already buried.
Which layer are the corals? I know the answer, but I want to hear it from you.
They're below. They would be buried before the beaches. So,
Huh? Before the beaches? Before the beaches are the Precambrians.
yeah, but there's coral and fossilized beaches above the Precambrian.
Hmm. So what's the problem? I mean, like
So
I
how's
said,
the flood lifting up stuff undisturbed from under the stuff that it's burying and putting it
what?
on in the middle?
So you're asking me how those corals? Which layer are we talking about? Which layer exactly? Because there are 6 mega sequence of rock layers. Which layer are you talking about?
So assuming that the
There are.
flood's coming
Please,
up,
please. Now, please tell me which layer are the corals. Are
there
they
isn't a
everywhere?
specific
Are
layer.
they everywhere? Or
Yeah,
they are
that's the thing. Is
everywhere?
they're spread
Everywhere?
throughout the whole thing.
Okay, you're
So,
right.
but that shouldn't be possible
That is.
under the creationist model where the corals get buried first. They should
Huh?
only find them down. We should only find them in the lower layers.
Well, at the later stages of the flood, the 50 to 100 foot tsunamis would carry those corals up.
So there's a reef in Texas that it's 100 miles wide,
Mhm.
and it's not broken up. It's not disturbed at all. It's just sitting there.
Mm.
So 100 foot high waves are supposed to lift 100-mile long piece of rock without cracking it or breaking it.
You are not looking at the big picture here. You at first you were talking about the corals. I thought you were talking about the corals at the sea being lifted up
It's a
into
fossil
those
reef.
layers. Huh?
It's a
Yes,
fossil
it's
reef.
also reef. And you said there are reefs that are undisturbed, just like kind of like they did not suffer the flood. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, it doesn't look like they were lifted up through sediments by
Yeah,
catastrophic forces.
of course.
But that's what would have had to have happened for it to be placed in that
Not
sequence.
not necessarily. The flood did not cover 100% of the earth. Did you know that? Based on our model, there are parts of the landmass that were not disturbed at all. That is my answer.
And so they weren't buried under any sediments?
Some of them. But how many are you talking about?
Well, I'm just talking about a specific reef in Texas, the Delaware Basin.
I'm not so sure about that. But there are some parts of the world that was not affected by catastrophic plate tectonics. Just like the heat problem did not affect some parts of the ocean worldwide. Because there were more water, just like today, there were far more water pre-flood than post-flood. So some are going to be undisturbed, just some, not all.
So if that's your explanation that it's undisturbed, then it still doesn't make sense because it's in the middle of Texas, which doesn't have an ocean in it. So it would have had to be carried by the flood undisturbed
what is the
into
elevation?
the middle of Texas.
What's the elevation of these corals? How high are they?
I'm not sure. It's a basin in Texas. I don't know what the elevation
what is a basin again in other words? I forgot the English for that basin.
It's kind of like a valley.
Oh, a valley. Okay, better. So the corals are on top of the valley. Correct?
Yeah, I think so.
And then covered with water. Right?
But it's in the middle of Texas though, so it's not currently near any beaches.
Oh, so I said so some in a valley. It's even better actually. Of course, like I said, the flood is slow and gradual. Okay. And some parts of the world.
It says it's.
You're googling it.
610 vertical meters above
how many?
sea level.
600 what?
610 meters above sea level.
Oh, that's today. That's today, right?
Sorry?
That's today. That's the measurement today, correct?
Yeah.
But it was different before the flood. Because mountains arose, valleys sank. You know that? Catastrophic plate tectonics, movements, some movements are like this, some movements are like that.
So
do you get what I mean?
Yeah, so was there an ocean in the middle of Texas?
No.
That didn't cover
at the valley, you mean in the valley?
Yeah, it's in Texas.
Texas is in the middle of the United States, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And the breaking up of the continents is the location of the primary location where the continents split from. There's one supercontinent, right? The primary area where the continent split apart to the continent configuration we have today is the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. And because Africa and South America can be linked, with some features of it can be linked, and Europe and America too. And now, your corals, you're saying, is at the middle of America. So since it is so far, it's inland, okay, and the flood is slow and gradual, like I said at its first phase, then how can it be affected? And especially it's in the valley. We're talking about miles and miles and miles here. It's in the middle of America, right? And it's on top of a valley, even better. I didn't even know it's on top of the valley until you say it right now.
So there must have been an ocean there, right? At some point.
Depends. Some parts of the catastrophic plate tectonics models, because the plates were moving up and down, right? So some valleys would not be covered by water.
But it was a worldwide flood, and it began at the coastline, so that should be the first place to be buried.
Let me tell you, it is a worldwide flood, yes. But there are isolated parts where there are still floods, but it is not that high. You think the flood is as high as Mount Everest? No. Mount Everest only uplifted after the flood. And most of the mountains, like the Appalachians, like that. And don't forget, the Appalachian Mountains are in the eastern part of the United States, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong. Am I correct?
What was the question?
Are the Appalachian Mountains at the eastern? Sorry.
Oh yes.
At the guys, where's the Appalachian Mountain? It's in the left side of the United States, right?
Right side, East Coast.
Right side. Okay, at the New York area.
Yeah.
Okay, that provides more. Okay, during the flood, it is kind of like a plateau. Okay, it is not as high as it is right now. It is kind of like a plateau, which provides more shield for the tsunami, from the tsunamis to go to the valley where your corals are. Can we move away from these corals? It's taking too long. What about your other stronger arguments? Or what about me starting to ask questions? Up to you.
Oh yeah, you can ask questions. I did have
Yes.
one more question pertaining to geology specifically, but
Okay. So my
you can go
question.
if you want.
So what? You gonna ask another question or my turn?
You can go if you want. I'll give you.
Okay.
Your turn.
I'd like to ask you to be specific. Let me think. What question am I gonna ask you? Do you know the configuration of the crust and mantle? That the ocean crust is different and more dense than the continental crust. Do you know this? So the lighter continents float on the crowded. Sorry, my English again. The continents float on the denser mantle, on the dense mantle beneath them.
Yeah.
You know about this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. For example, the Himalayas are the roof of the world, so they are also the deepest. Correct? I'm talking about your model, not ours. So let's not be confused about this. So we are assuming that the Everest is already there. Himalayas already there based on your model. So the Himalayas and the Everest being the highest mountains in the world, what do you expect from its roots down there? If it is the highest in the world, and like I said, the crust floats on the mantle underneath, and the ocean crust is more dense than the continental crust. So the lighter continents float on the sorry, I stammer. So the lighter continents float on the denser, more crowded. Again, I'm sorry for saying crowded. I'm that. So the lighter continents float on the denser mantle beneath them. Okay, and the Himalayas being the roof of the world, you expect that that below the Himalayas it should also be what? Tell me.
I would expect a lot of subduction based
on
the model because if they've been colliding for so long and piled up for so long.
Sorry, I'm not talking about the. I'm asking you, what if the base? I already explained twice the configuration of the crust and mantle. So I mean, the Himalayas being the roof of the world, and since it sits on top of the crust, all right, and the crust it floats on the mantle. Okay, right? Do you agree that it floats on the mantle because the ocean crust is different and more dense than the continental crust? So the lighter continents float on the denser, more crowded, crowded again, the more dense mantle beneath them. Okay, so the Himalayas being the roof of the world, or let's say even the Appalachians, as high as that, what do you expect down there? below the Himalayas, that there would be what?
I expect there to be evidence of two plates colliding.
Yes, but
So one plate would be
no.
going
Basically,
underneath the other plate, more or less.
yes, that's correct. But since the Himalayas is the roof of the world, what do you expect down there?
I mean, that's
There
what
has
I
to be a
expect.
root
I don't
over
know
there,
where
right?
you're going with it exactly.
There has to be a root down there, right? Which could carry the Himalayas. There has to be a root to
No,
go up so high. All
I mean
right.
it's just
I
it's
mean
just
that.
floating on top, as you said.
Yeah, yeah. The Himalayas are the roof of the world. They are also the deepest. Deepest. I mean, the Himalayas has the deepest crust also. Don't you get it? Also because so if it's the deepest, meaning there has to be a root underneath, correct? To sustain it. Am I right? Or else it will sink, correct?
No, because it can just float on top with the rest of the Earth. Because the actual crust is much thicker than the Himalayas
No,
are.
you're not getting it. For the Himalayas to go up so high, there has to be more underneath. This means the ocean floor, being more dense, sinks and the continents rise. That is why the continents today are above sea level.
That would be kind of like saying that if I have like I don't know, like a something that floats in water, and I just put a single grain of sand on it, and I say, well, it needs to be thicker on the bottom. The size of the Himalayas is trivial compared to the size of the crust. The crust is much thicker, and this will come up if you talk to flat earthers ever. Is if you take all the mountains, the highest mountains on the Earth, it's actually smoother than a ping pong ball is in
No, the crust
comparison.
is
The
more dense.
scale.
The crust is more dense. Uh,
Isn't the mantle more dense?
it is more dense. Okay, it is more dense. So this means that the ocean floor being more dense. Sorry. The this means the ocean floor being more dense sinks and the continents rise. That is why continents are sorry. That's why the continents are at above sea level. Let me illustrate it to you. I hope we made a slide before this because I never prepare for any debates. Let's say, can you see my hands, my fingers?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is the root of the Himalayas, and this is the top. Can you see me doing this in my hands?
Yeah.
Okay. This is the root of the Himalayas, and this is the top of the Himalayas. Okay, and it sits on top of the crust. Okay, and the lower the mountain, okay, the root gets it won't be as steep. So Himalayas compared to Appalachians, Himalayas higher. So Himalayas like this. There's a root to support it. Okay, and the Appalachian Mountains also. There is a root, but it is not as high as the Himalayas, not as heavy as the Himalayas, but it also has a root. All mountains have a root. Do you not know this?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so
But
my point here is this.
I'm just not sure where you're going with it.
Yeah, don't worry. I'm going to something you can never answer. No geologist has ever answered this. This is a trade secret among geologists. Okay.
Okay.
So now, based on this configuration, okay, Himalayas like this. It is directly on top, like this. The root is here. There needs to be a root. Okay, and the Himalayas, it's like this, right? Correct. And its root is
Yeah.
over here. And the surrounding mountains of the Himalayas, some are lower elevation, right? So you would expect the root to be not as, for example, sorry, Mount Everest, its root should be the deepest, the more the largest, or whatever the English word is. Okay, and the Himalayas being lower than the Mount Everest should be kind of like this. Himalayas like this. Sorry, Mount Everest like this, and then the Himalayas a little bit like this. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So by that configuration, you cannot sink the continents through that, because there are 6 mega sequences of rock layers worldwide with fossils in them, marine fossils in them. So based on this configuration, how can you sink the continents? Okay, you have 6 mega sequences of rock layers worldwide which have marine creatures. Okay, so based on this configuration, how do you sink the continents to produce those 6 mega sequence of rock layers?
How do I sink them?
How do you deposit all the marine creatures, the sediments, on top of the continent? That is my question. Based on this, because it cannot go down. It's just like this. There's here, land. It cannot go down. How can the sea level rise to flood the continents with the sediments on them when you cannot even increase the sea level, because the mountains are in this type of configuration? I already told you the configuration of the crust and mantle a while ago. So how do you deposit those 6 mega sequence of rock layers without raising the sea level and without the mountains going down? Huh? How do we do that? Right? You need the sea levels to rise and fall on the continents 6 times, because there are 6 mega sequence of rock layers worldwide to deposit those sediments of marine life, right?
So I'm trying to understand.
So it's impossible to do it. It's already. You're saying, okay, your turn.
Is the question, why is there sea life on top of the mountains?
All rock layers worldwide, marine creatures. So if the continents cannot sink due to this configuration, I explained twice.
Okay.
Before I explained twice already the configuration of the continents. So there are 2 problems here. How can you raise sea levels, and how can you sink how can you sink the mountains so that the sea level can flood the continent and produce your layers based on your model? How do you do that?
So presumably the
You have to do it
mountains
6
were
times.
formed. The mountains were formed after the flood in your model, right?
No. I'm talking about your
otherwise
model.
it couldn't
I'm sorry,
get up there. So
I'm sorry. I'm talking about your model here, not ours.
No, I'm getting to it. So we wouldn't sink the mountains. The mountains would have been produced after the fossils were laid down in them. Sort of like how your model says that as well.
You are talking like a creationist right now. Did you not hear what I said? The crust floats on the mantle underneath. And the ocean crust is different and more dense from the continental crust. So the lighter continents float on the denser mantle beneath them.
So was this the trick question that no geologist can answer? Because that's basic geology of how mountains rise up from the
You can Google it. You can Google it.
I mean, that's
no. It is not about the mountains rising up. It is about what's below the mountains, which prevents it from sinking. In your model, at least, not ours.
It's floating on top of the mantle.
What?
It's floating on top of the mantle.
The crust is floating, not the mountains.
Yeah, but the crust is about like 10 times thicker than the mountain is tall. So
don't think you are
the mountain is like not adding much more weight to it. So it can still float.
You are not understanding my question here.
I don't. Apparently not.
So you're guessing your answer.
So why are you saying how are the mountains?
You can Google it. There's no answer for this.
Why aren't they sinking? Or why is there life on top of them?
What is making the Himalayas stable? There has to be a root down there, right? Sorry if my voice is a little loud. Sorry.
It's just a pile on top of the crust, which is already floating there.
What? A pile of what?
The crust is already floating on top, which is billions of pounds and on top of the mantle.
But the crust is denser. So the mountains cannot go down. It is denser. So the mountains cannot go down. And if the mountains cannot go down, the sea levels cannot go up. Right? So how in your model, how do you explain the 6 mega sequence of rock layers other than catastrophism?
Why do you think the mountains are going down?
I didn't say the mountains are going down. I said the mountains cannot go down. And if the mountains cannot go down, then the sea level cannot rise. Right? Mountain, sea level, mountain cannot go down, so sea level stays here. Okay? So the mountains have to go down so that the sea level will go up to deposit the sediments worldwide. How do you explain the 6 mega sequence of rock layers of marine fossils and sediments form? They need the sea level to rise and fall 6 to 7 times with the 6 mega sequence of rock layers, right? Worldwide to deposit sediments of marine life. And it's impossible to do it just once. You have to do it 6 times. But our model does explain that.
So it's impossible for...
The crust is denser, don't forget.
It's impossible for the sea level to go up and down unless the mountains are going up and down?
So, sorry. Come again.
So you're saying it's impossible for the sea level to change unless the mountains are going up and down?
So what? The sea levels cannot go up? Yeah, yes, something like that.
I mean, if all the glaciers melt, then the sea levels rise too.
The what? The glaciers?
Yeah.
I'm talking about the waters of the world, not just the glaciers.
And do you subscribe to Pangea?
What do you mean subscribe?
I mean, I guess you guys... So when Pangea changes, when the plates shift on the crust, some of them dip under the water, and some of them get pushed above the water level.
Okay.
And I mean, it's the same thing whether you think that it happened really quickly or very slowly.
I don't understand what you're talking about. Can you?
It doesn't require mountains to go into the water to displace the water to rise it. But if a tectonic plate meets another tectonic plate, it can start to go underneath.
Crust, denser, mountain on top of crust. How do you sink the mountain so that the water levels would rise?
No one's trying to sink a mountain.
Of rock layers. We're taking too long with this subject alone.
I don't know why anyone's trying to sink a mountain.
Because you need the mountains to sink in order for the sea levels to rise.
No geologist would ever say that.
Really?
That I'm aware of.
Google it right now.
Google what? Mountains dip into the water?
Because right now, what is happening to the mountains? They're going up inches per year, right? Sorry. Yeah, it is still moving, right? Going up, correct? Why is it going up, not going down? Because the crust floats on the mantle beneath them. Okay, and the ocean crust is more dense than the continental crust. So how can you sink the mountain? That is why it only goes up, because you cannot sink them.
Who's saying that the mountains need to sink?
In order for your 6 mega sequence of rock layers to form, you need the mountains to sink, so that we're going back and forth here. You need this is the waters, right? The waters.
Yeah, can you give me some sort of citation for this?
You need what?
Can you give me some sort of citation for this? Because I've never heard anyone say that
This
the
is a trade
mountains have
secret.
to
This is a trade
rise.
secret. This is very obvious. All geologists agree that the crust flows on the mantle underneath. You know why they suggest catastrophism?
But I don't think that they agree that the mountains have to sink.
They have to sink so that the waters.
Where does a geologist say that the mountains have to sink?
How else would you deposit the 6 mega sequence of rock layers? Do you know why? Do you know why many geologists have postulated or suggest the catastrophism model? Because they cannot explain this. So they need a catastrophe to lay down the dinosaur layer, the iridium layer, for example.
Well, they used to think that, and then they abandoned that model like a couple hundred years ago because it doesn't work.
No, it was only 20 to 30 years ago.
No,
they did not abandon it. It is still theoretical.
Catastrophism was not in geology 20 or 30 years ago. I guarantee you that.
Which one again did they abandon?
Catastrophism was abandoned like almost, if not more than 200 years ago.
No.
That's why no one will hire a catastrophist geologist to find oil for them, because it doesn't work. That's the ultimate test. Are oil companies hiring you? Are mineral companies, are miners hiring you guys? No, they're hiring real geologists because their models actually work.
I hope I remember the guy who wrote about this. It was only 30 years ago. It's only 30 years ago that he invoked. So you're telling me those 6 mega sequence of rock layers were none of them were deposited by catastrophism? What about the meteor that crashed in your model and buried the dinosaurs? Is that not catastrophism? Why do they need to invoke that?
Catastrophes exist, floods exist. It doesn't mean that it's the only thing that ever happened.
Oh.
So
you just said that catastrophism was abandoned 200 years ago.
That's not catastrophism. A meteor hitting is not catastrophism.
It is catastrophism. It almost wiped out the dinosaurs. At least that is one explanation.
A catastrophe is not catastrophism. Catastrophes happen. That's not.
Catastrophes happen isolated.
Catastrophism is the idea that it was only possible to be formed via a catastrophe.
Okay, say again. Say again, please.
So catastrophism is the theory that the changes in Earth's crust during geological history have resulted chiefly or exclusively from sudden, violent, and unusual events. And that's not modern geology. Geology has catastrophes, but it's not catastrophism.
But why are we defining terms here? Can you explain the 6 mega sequence of rock layers, how they form, based on the configuration?
There's also gradualism. And
yeah, I know there's gradualism, but the crust flows on the mantle underneath, and the crust is more dense. So how do you sink Mount Everest so that we could deposit marine life on top of Mount Everest? How do you sink the root of the Himalayas and the Mount Everest to deposit those 6 mega sequence of rock layers?
You couldn't fit that much dirt in a mountain.
Huh?
You can't fit that much dirt in a mountain.
What do you mean I can't fit that much dirt in the mountain?
Mountains are so small compared to the thickness of the crust.
But it's denser. The crust is denser, so the mountains will not sink.
Yeah, so
that is why it's going up right now.
So you would get even less plates from a mountain because you'd have to pack that mountain even denser. So you'd have less volume.
Let me explain it again. The crust floats on the mantle underneath. And the ocean crust is different and more dense from the continental crust. So the lighter continents in your model float on the denser mantle beneath them.
For example, the Himalayas are the roof of the world, and they are also the deepest. Deepest, I mean the Himalayas has the deepest crust also. Correct? Also,
No.
really? No? As
I
a
mean,
geologist.
Look, I mean, if I could share my screen, I can show you something I'm looking at.
This is something you can learn in advanced geology school. Do not share any screen in which
No advanced geology school is going to tell you that a couple of mountains have enough volume in them to create a crust layer. They're too small. The mountains are too small to create a crust layer. There's not enough volume.
I did not say the mountains are created. I never said mountains created the crust.
Yes, you did.
I did not. I
yes,
said the crust.
You said they created the mega sequences, which are part of the crust layers.
The 6 mega sequences are not the crust. The 6 mega sequence are the sediments.
Which
is part of the sedimentary layers. So the crust floats on the mantle. Again, the crust floats on the mantle underneath, and the ocean crust is different and more dense from the continental crust. So the lighter continents float on the denser mantle beneath them. And the Himalayas is a good example. I can also use the Appalachians or the Andes of South America. The Himalayas are the roof of the world by this configuration, and they are also the deepest. So again, when I say deepest, I mean the Himalayas has the deepest crust also, because you have to have the root underneath, the root that I was talking about. So for the Himalayas to go so high, okay, there has to be more underneath. That means the ocean floor being more dense sink and the continents rise. That's why continents are above sea level today.
No, mountains aren't heavy enough to make the crust sink. It's just a little tiny pile on top of a very thick crust. And I could show you a picture of that if I could share my screen. I don't know who's in control of that. The mountains are not big enough. The mountains are not big enough to weigh down the crust, and the mountains are not big enough to create a crust. They're very small compared to the crust.
The Himalayas are very small.
And they wouldn't displace much ocean water.
It is dense. It is so dense. The crust is so dense.
Yeah, so the mountain would be less dense. So it wouldn't do much
to
push it back
there
down.
You go. I gotcha there. Less dense.
Right, I've been saying that the whole time. So if you compress the mountain down into the crust, it's going to take up less volume than it did on top of the crust.
So you're right. That's exactly.
Yeah.
Because the crust is more dense, so it means it's more crowded. Okay, I'm saying crowded again. So it's hard. So how do you sink the continents, the mountains? So that sea levels would rise and produce the 6 mega sequence of rock layers, unless you invoke catastrophism.
That's not how the mega sequences were formed.
I know. Some, based on your model, some were formed through catastrophism. How do you think the dinosaur layer was formed in the first place? The theory was
gradualism,
and the tsunamis buried them, correct? That is why they need catastrophism, because they cannot explain this. Can we move on to another subject? This is taking too long over here.
It's all explained by gradualism, which is why they get hired and creationists don't, because it actually works. If your model could actually model accurately the rock layers, you would be hired by miners and oil companies.
I don't get the hiring of miners and oil companies.
Because your model doesn't work, so no one's going to hire creationists.
Which model? Which model? Which part of our model doesn't work?
Catastrophism cannot predict what's in the rock layers. Gradualism can.
Is your model also?
Gradualism can.
What? What cannot produce what?
Catastrophism cannot produce accurate results. Gradualism can.
Gradualism can. All right.
Okay.
So explain the 6 mega sequence of rock layers. And why were they fossilized immediately, so quickly? if it wasn't catastrophism?
The entire megasequence was not a flood. Floods happen in those megasequences.
How are they
That doesn't
fossilized
mean-
immediately?
What?
Why were they fossilized immediately?
Nothing fossilizes immediately.
No.
Floods happened, yes.
Why
Does
do
that mean it was
dinosaurs?
all the same flood? No.
Huh?
Floods happen, but that doesn't mean that it was all the same flood.
Floods happen now because it is not the same flood. I don't. It doesn't make sense, really. I don't think you know the configuration of the continents. That is why you don't understand.
No, it's just that floods happen, but
Yes.
that doesn't mean that it was one flood.
So why do they need to invoke catastrophism? We're going rounds here.
They don't.
They do.
They
The
don't.
meteor crash.
Unless
The
you're
meteor
defining
crash.
catastrophism as modern geology and gradualism, because they also use that.
Yeah, some parts of in your model, some parts of the 6 mega sequences. One was how many? 1, 2, or 3 were, like you said, laid down slowly, and then one of them or two of them were due to catastrophe, and that is the dinosaur layer, the iridium dinosaur layer, through meteor strike. And that meteor strike created huge tsunamis that created that layer of the dinosaur. Can we move on to you go for the next question? We're taking too long over here. We're supposed to talk about dating and rapid speciation and things like that. Do you have any other questions?
My
about
question
the flood?
was going to be, how come no one hires creationist geologists?
What's the point of that question?
Because if creationist geology was accurate, then people would be hiring you. But it's not accurate. No one uses it.
Let me tell you a little story. There's a guy named Dr. Andrew Snelling. He's a geologist from Australia who works at Answers in Genesis. He tried to go to the Grand Canyon once to correct some rock samples. He wasn't allowed to because he was a creationist at first. But so there's discrimination, as you can see. All right? And this is just an isolated situation. And it went to court. And Dr. Andrew Snelling won. He was able to go to the Grand Canyon and provide evidence. Now, do you want to talk about your best evidence in your favorite
So how does
argument?
that answer the question?
What question? You asked me why no creationist geologists are hired.
Do the oil companies
right now? There's a bias. There's a bias.
Do they know? Okay, so if there's a bias, they must love being wrong more than they love making money, right? Because if they could find more oil, more minerals with more accurate methods, then why wouldn't they just do that?
Are we talking about politics now? I'm not sure I'm getting what you mean.
You're the one positing a grand conspiracy to suppress the truth, even though these companies they don't care what any scientists are saying. They just want whoever can find the most oil or the most minerals. And creationists cannot do that. Period.
So you mean to say they don't hire creationists to do oil drill? What does this have to do with anything?
Because your model is so inaccurate, no one uses it.
With all due respect, we're off topic now.
So
with all due respect, we're really off topic now. Please.
Change topic.
Yeah, we should change topic. Your favorite argument, which you said disproves the flood, the layers. Do you want to tackle that?
That was my favorite argument.
So tell me more about it. How do you disprove it? I already told you.
If it works, then it's most likely accurate. And if you can't make any predictions while other people can, then it's not accurate. It's as simple as that.
What predictions are we talking about here? We're talking about the laying down of the rock sequences now, this time based on our model. So you said your favorite argument is the how can all dinosaurs be here? How can all reptiles be here in this layer? How can all fish be here at this layer? How can there, yeah, right? Is that your argument?
Well, I said my favorite argument is just the one that I don't even need to know anything about geology because I just look at who gets hired. So if modern geologists understand how the layers formed, which is why they're able to predict things and creationists are not.
So that's your answer to my question? It's not even scientific. We're going into politics here. Some kind of a politics. Come on, Snake.
I'm saying it's based on the free market. You're saying it's a political conspiracy. I'm not.
Oh, what does it have to do with science?
That the best people get hired for the job.
Unless you're a creationist.
Because your ideas.
Unless you are a young Earth creationist. Because there are other types of creationists. There are old Earth creationists. There are theistic evolutionists.
They don't hate your arguments so much that they would lose money over it.
What do you mean? My English is not very good. What do you mean? We're off topic here.
If creationist geology works,
tell me how
try to make money off of it.
Moderator, this is off topic, correct? He's going off topic.
Well,
moderator,
you asked for my favorite argument. I'm just saying that's what it is.
That is your favorite. The last time we debate, you told me your favorite argument, which disproves the flood, is how are all the dinosaurs here in this layer, and why are all the reptiles in this layer? So right now, I'm going to address that. You first.
Hey guys, can we keep it on the subject? Yeah, I agree, Jeremy. Let's keep this on the subject, Snake too, because this is a scientific discussion.
Yeah, he's going off topic. Forgive me, Snake, for my tone.
Yeah, we'll just try to keep it on topic. So here we go.
I just answered your question. Am I able to share my screen at all?
Depends. I can see it. I almost can't see anything here. So small. The screen is so small.
Oh.
Yeah, hold on. I'll share it for you, Snake. 1 second here.
So let's talk about your best evidence. Let's talk about your best evidence against the flood, Snake.
What?
Let's talk about your best evidence against the flood, which you are so proud to share many times before.
That was my best evidence because I'm not a geologist, so I'm just going to look at.
So I'm going to explain it to you.
Who actually gets hired to do the job?
I'm going to explain it to you if you want.
Okay.
So you ask the question first.
Why do creationists not get hired by people who don't care about ideology or affiliation?
Topic again.
I'm just going to jump in here real quick. I'm just going to, if we want to keep it on the science, like for example, Snake, do you have, an objection? It doesn't have to be, your number one objection, but whether or not it's like the order in the fossil record or something science-based against the flood that you can have Jeremy address and kind of critique and then go back and forth on that, or?
Yes, Snake, you were so proud many times you were so proud to say that this is your best evidence, and many geologists agree this is one of the best evidence against the flood. Why are dinosaurs so organized in this layer? Why are reptiles so organized in this layer?
Yeah, you can't explain that because floods mix things up, even really slow floods. But I thought you wanted to move on to geology.
Can't mix things up. For example, let's say a whale. There are also water ecosystems in the water where some animals, some marine life or whales live here, and sharks live here in different locations. Okay, so in the fossil record, tell me, are they buried together or not?
Depends.
What do you mean it depends?
There's sharks throughout the whole thing.
Okay.
Or some sharks are typical of certain layers around the entire Earth, which would be impossible for a flood to do.
So, sorry, some whales are not in the whole world,
So
not in all the layers.
Extinct sharks of the same species are all found in the same layer across the entire world, which a flood could not know how to do.
So you're telling me whales cannot be transported to land?
I'm telling you that they couldn't be uniformly transported in the same way, in the same pattern throughout the entire history of the entire flood. They would get mixed up randomly. You'd have some up above, some below, some tangled up and stuff. But instead, you send the same species in the same way.
Of course. That's what you would expect in a flood, global flood.
No.
Right? Some whales live here. Some whales live here. Some whales live here. Some whales live here. The pre-flood world was teeming with life. So some whales will be buried. Whale groups will be buried first, and then the other groups will be buried into another rock layer. The same with all other species on Earth. So all the mix-ups that you are talking about is debunked by this argument alone.
Yeah, but all species of whale have to surface, and so the flood wouldn't be able to select those species. They wouldn't just all be hanging out at the same depth at the same time.
Sorry, what do you mean? Of course, you are forgetting my first point a while ago. I said the flood started slow and gradual, and it started to rise. Okay? So some of the first groups of whales will be buried first, and the other group buried next, something like that. Because there are different, there are whales here, there are whales here, there are whales here. The ocean is too huge. So there are a lot of what do you call that? Whale places. Whale, I don't know the English word. Whale. There are whales in this part of the ocean. There are whales in this part of the ocean. There are whales in this part, this part, this part, this part, this part. So those tsunamis that will carry the whales. Okay, for example, the whales here would put them in this layer. And then another tsunami would put these types of whales on this area.
So the entire species would all hang out in the same place at the same time.
Unless God, being a master designer, would put all the whales in just one location.
So he could kill them
they
all.
They were all buried together. So in two scenarios, I gave you two scenarios on how to debunk and how to prove it. Either it's mixed up or not mixed up. No problem for us, for our model. Did you get what I mean? The same goes with sharks, everything in the fossil record.
That is a problem for your model because you guys don't understand how the layers actually form, which is why you can't find minerals, which is why no one hires creationists.
We can't? Huh? What minerals are? We're back at the minerals again. Can you please really elaborate on the minerals?
So we understand what minerals form, why, and what geologic processes. And the reason we test that is because we can go out and find them reliably based on those methods. So those methods only work in modern geology.
So you mean to say that we do not have the minerals to deposit the 6 megasequence of rock layers? Is that what you're saying?
No. I'm saying that creationists don't understand how the layers were laid down, so they can't find what minerals are mixed up where.
I know how
but modern geologists can do that, which proves that they know what they're talking about.
Okay, you did not answer my whale thing, and then now you shifted to this mineral thing.
I asked you, why would every member of the entire species be hanging out at the same depth at the same time worldwide? Without exception.
What do you mean? We
don't find the old species of whales in the upper layers, even if they were surface type whales.
Oh, I already told you that there are groups of whales.
We find animals that live at the surface of the water at the lowest
layer,
Part-
the lowest layer. You're telling me there's a whale on the lowest layer?
On not the lowest layer.
There's a whale on the lowest layer. Slow and gradual. You said that's impossible to deposit a whale like the slow and gradual. I mean, we started with the Indonesian tsunami, and look at how much material the Indonesian tsunami brought into another cars and so on, brought into a place. So you think it cannot this starting point tsunami cannot drag a whale into the first layer?
No, I'm saying that it can't do it with every member of that species the entire world over and exclusively in that layer. Because
of course, like I said,
that would be the same.
There are different whales here. There are whales here in the ocean. Here, Pangea. This is Pangea. There are whales here, whales here, whales here, whales here, whales here. Very different whales.
Up and down.
So
some of them are at the surface. Some of them dive.
Sorry.
Some of the members of the same species would be near the surface, while others of the same species would be deeper. So why are all members of the same species found exclusively in the same layer?
Thank you for asking that. Thank you for asking that.
Because let me finish. Do you see the picture on my screen? That would be like this flood causing only telephones to be found in the bottom layer and only laptops to be found in the next layer. And
okay, I'm really glad you opened this issue up, because a smart engineer like God, okay, like I said, there are two scenarios. One is the whales are on different types of whales different whales live here on this is Pangea, whale here, whale here, whale here, whale here, whale here. Okay, so first scenario, okay, those first tsunamis, like the Indonesian one, could put them at the first layer because they're strong enough. Okay, but some will not be buried. Not all, because we only found a few whales. Don't tell me we found a lot of whales in the first layer.
No, I'm not saying the first layers.
You just said the first layers.
No, I said the lower layers.
Can we please rewind this thing? Okay. You were saying that let's for example, you were saying that all the whales are in one layer, correct?
Certain species are exclusively found in certain layers.
Yes, because they live on a specific place in the ocean. And then driven by the tsunami.
Whales can't do that, though. Whales can't do that. They have to come up for air. So you're saying every single species was at a specific depth at the same time as the flood killed them.
I don't understand what you're talking about, really. Same depth? Same depth.
That would mean that every member of that species of whale would have to have been buried at the same depth, either at the same time or at different times, and both are mathematically
where's the whale layer?
Where's
hang on, just fast. Where's the whale? Where to answer this? Where is the whale in those 6 megaseconds of roundings?
Some are at the surface breathing, others are not, potentially.
Oh, I already answered that question. Because some whales live here, some whales live here, some whales live here, some whales live here.
So every member of the entire species comes up for breath at the same time?
Huh?
Every member of the species comes up for breath at the exact same time, worldwide?
What do you mean they come up for breath at the same time?
Because you're saying that they live at certain depths, which whales don't really do, because they have to come up for air.
Yeah. So there are whales here. There are whales here. Yeah. Okay, they can breathe. They have to surface to breathe on this part of, let's say, west of Pangea, the west of Pangea.
In order to get in the same layer, they would all have to have the same breathing schedule, exactly the same breathing schedule, and that's absurd.
So what's the problem?
That's absurd. A smart engineer like God would not use a flood.
the same breathings. Oh, so what's the problem? There are groups of whales here, which are trying to surface and breathe, and here, and they were buried at the same time.
And they're all in sync.
Or another scenario, God, the master designer, put all whales in just one location. And then,
why wouldn't he just snap his fingers and make it exactly how he wanted? Why go through this year-long process? He could just snap his fingers and just get rid of the people he wanted to get rid of and not have to kill 90% of all life just for existing on the same planet as some guy who ate an apple.
Can you tell me that in a better English way, because I don't understand. It's kind of like a poetic something to me.
Yeah.
Can you explain it in a better way?
God could have just instantly made the world how he wanted it to be. He could have instantly gotten rid of the sinners, and he could have instantly made the world mountainous and different. And he could have spared the 90% of creatures that he drowned for no reason. Like, why didn't...
Moderator, forgive me, Snake.
So
Moderator is going to another topic.
Those species obviously could not survive the flood. 90% of species, at least, could not survive the flood. Why weren't they given a spot on the ark?
So you're talking about the heat problem here? So are we going there now?
Heat problem?
Huh? Are we going to the heat problem now? Is that where you're going? Because the ocean, it's like you're saying the ocean is too hot. So these...
No, it has nothing to do with heat.
Oh, so exactly what snapping of fingers are you talking about?
God can instantly transform his thoughts into reality.
Huh? Moderator, off topic.
This is one of the problems I have with the flood.
What does this have to do with a flood? I don't get it.
Because a smart engineer like God, like you said, would not use a flood. He would just instantly make things exactly how he wanted them.
Because of sin. Because of sin. That is why catastrophic plate tectonics happen. We are not talking about science right now. We're talking about doctrine or something over here. Yeah, moderator, going off topic.
Versus religion. Your religion is very much in topic.
He is going away from the topic, moderator. Please.
No. This is the topic. This is your religion. This is what you have to defend.
You also have a religion.
No,
we're not going to talk about this religion thing. This is not the science.
This is the flood story. I'm saying I have a problem with your story.
Oh, so tell me. I already explained the whale thing. Oh, they all came up to breathe. They all came up to breathe, like you said.
Your only explanation was that God magically would have corralled them all in the same place just to slaughter them.
I did not say that.
You did. He said he would have put them...
tectonics, those tsunamis.
He said he would have gathered. Them all.
The only God explanation, the only supernatural explanation, the only one supernatural explanation in the catastrophic plate tectonic models is God cracking the ocean floor.
So then it's impossible.
That's it. That's all. And then the rest happened naturally. Please do not misrepresent our evidence.
So 2 problems. God could have avoided all of that supernaturally. He could have spared the innocent children and the innocent animals. And 2, the pattern of the fossil layers is impossible unless there was divine intervention during the flood. Because not every member of every species of whale is going to be doing the same thing at the same time.
Of course, that is why they are on different layers, like you said.
It's impossible for a flood to sort them in those discrete layers unless they're doing the same thing at the same time.
Well, what do you mean doing the same thing?
They would have to be at the same depth worldwide.
The whales, you mean? They'd have to be at the same depth.
Every member of that species, yeah.
Okay.
So every member, each layer you see here, would have had to have been every member at the same depth at the same time. Otherwise, they would have all just been mixed up, because some of these down here might be breathing at the time that these other ones are diving down.
Are they all breathing? Do they all look like they're breathing?
They don't have to breathe, they're whales.
No, when they surface, sorry. When they surface.
Yeah, they usually breathe when they surface.
So what's the problem?
So there's no way for a flood that randomly mixes things up to put them in discrete layers like that.
Well, why? At this point, okay, this is Pangea, right? The whales are right here, and the whales here are breathing, and then one tsunami transports them to a location, okay, in one location, okay, because tsunamis in our flood model, this is Pangea, right? Tsunamis can go this way towards the Pangea, okay. So at the whale layer in the 6 mega sequence, those whales which were dragged by the tsunamis, okay, would all be in the same layer also.
So we would have every whale present mixed up in that same
Are they
tsunami.
all breathing there? Are they all breathing? Are they all the same configuration?
Not at
Do
the
they
same
all look
time.
like the same configuration? More or less, but not exact, right?
Not at the same time.
Oh. You just said they're all in the same layer, right? I know where
If
whales
there's a
are.
wave that sweeps a bunch of whales at the top of the waters inland, then it's going to be all the different species of whales, not just certain specific species of whales that are only found in that layer.
Oh,
Because
so
there
I
would
already
be,
explained
there
that.
would be,
I
there
already
would be,
explained that.
there
Some
would be,
species of
there
whales
would
are right
be,
here.
there would
Some
be
species
other
of whales are right
whales
here.
that are deeper during that time, that are not breathing during that wave. Except the entire species is found exclusively in that one layer, which a flood
Not
cannot
really.
do.
Oh, let's say this group of whales here are breathing. Okay. Let's say a 50-foot wave of sediments carry them into this layer. Okay. And then the whales here are breathing or not breathing, or surfacing or not surfacing, also were carried by the same sediments and depositing them at the same layer, just like the whale groups over here. And the whales over here, okay, at the same depth also, okay.
Why would the whole species be at the same depth at the same time?
Why not?
Because
You mean
that's ridiculous.
why do the whales have to be at the same depth at the same time?
Because they're all in the same layer, so they would have had to have been buried at the same time.
Oh, so
Worldwide.
Oh, so I already
So
explained
that's
it.
impossible in a flood. If not a natural flood, it's impossible.
In one layer, we find a lot of species, and you know that, right? And you
Yeah,
said
but there are species specific to those layers.
Huh?
There are species specific to those layers.
All right. Okay.
Like you're gonna find a certain type of coelacanth exclusively in a certain layer, and you're gonna find more modern like coelacanths exclusively in the top layers.
It means they live on different locations.
Except we could prove that wrong with whales because they all have to surface.
What? So you mean to say these creatures you're talking about are below the whales or after the whales?
Fish could just stay at the same depth underwater at the same time and never surface. That's fine. But whales are constantly going up and down in depth. So you would have to have the entire species at the same depth at the same time worldwide at the same time that all of them are being buried.
My question to you is this: why don't we find any whale at the Grand Canyon? Why is the Grand Canyon all marine life? Why are all the layers in the world at the level of the Grand Canyon all marine life? Only exclusively of marine life, including your fish, which are sorted, like you said. I agree with that. Why do we find all of them just over there?
All of them at the Grand Canyon?
Yes. There are
Because they were once underwater?
trilobites are down here, and then the bigger fishes, bigger whatever. They just get bigger and bigger, up to the point they reach land. So why? It is all over the world.
Yeah, if it's in the same pattern all over the world, it couldn't have been caused by a natural flood, because water doesn't behave like that.
Yes, it can be, because the water levels at the start of the flood were just about just like the tsunami of the 2003 Indonesia, and those animals live on different places, so they would be buried, sorted, of course, in different layers. Obvious, right?
Except not all animals do live at the same depth.
Yeah.
So that destroys your.
So mix-ups do occur. Mix-ups do occur. You said you always love to say mix-ups. Okay, so here we go. Mix-ups. For example, let's say there's a mix-up of. Do you know that there's a at the Red Wall limestone, if I'm not mistaken, there is a population of nautiloids over there. Okay, there's a population of nautiloids. Okay. Do you know? Not just a population. There are billions and billions of fossilized nautiloids over there. Okay. The fossils are all in one direction only. And you know what? How the evolutionists explain that? Tell me, how do the evolutionists explain that? Why are all these nautiloids? Okay, tell me what evolutionists say how the Red Wall limestone formed, or if I'm not, I forgot which layer. The layer which houses the nautiloids, whatever layer it is. I think it's Red Wall. I just forgot, really. So how do evolutionists explain how the layer formed? Not the nautiloids, okay, not the nautiloids. Nautiloids, we go to nautiloids later. So how did that Red Wall limestone form based on your model? Limestone, that layer. I forgot the layer exactly. Red Wall, likely, but I'm not sure. Go.
I'm not a geologist, so I don't know how limestone forms.
I'm not even sure if it's a limestone that way. Anyway, here is the explanation which you don't know. I am not a geologist too, but I study your literature for 16 years. Now, here. Evolutionists say that layer where the nautiloids are were once a calm sea. A sea. Calm, very calm. But instead, you know what we find? Billions of nautiloids, all in the one billions. I mean, we're talking about miles and miles and miles from the Grand Canyon up to the what's the English word? Up to the suburbs of Las Vegas. All of those nautiloids in one direction. For example, their face. I forgot if it's their face. All right, let's pretend that this is their face. My English is really solid. Forgive me, Snake. For example, this is their face, and they're all like this. Those billions. Most of them are billions, billions, billions. This direction only. So if they were so if it was a calm sea, what are the odds that all these billions of nautiloids for so many miles up to the suburbs of Las Vegas, all at the same time, run into one direction, billions of them, and some are even broken? Only a catastrophe can explain that. Only the flood can explain that.
No.
Because evolutionists say that layer was a calm sea. So a calm sea would not do that to the nautiloids.
Yeah, it would.
No, it would. It would not.
Yeah,
They were
so
fossilized immediately.
there was a sea between.
No. There was no sea in between. They
Yeah,
say
there was
the
a
whole
sea.
layer was
There was
a
a
sea.
sea between the two coasts of America at some point.
Huh?
So that would
You're talking
explain the
about the
direction of it.
sea
But
from the Appalachians
nautiloids,
to the Grand Canyon, right?
nautiloids are living things, and like all living things, they die. So all you're doing is finding their corpses. They died naturally, or they died of predation, which there are animals that can crack open nautiloids. So that is not explainable only by a catastrophe.
Why are they all in the same direction?
Because that is the shape of the sea that went through the Americas.
No, the sea was calm. They say it is a normal sea. It's not.
Let me see if I can find a
not
picture
really
for you.
moving here. It is
It's
calm
not moving.
sea.
Yeah, right. But it's just sitting in the middle of the east and west coast of America. It's not a rushing violent sea, but it is between the two coasts.
Between the two what?
Right where Las Vegas is.
No, they extend from Las Vegas to the Grand Canyon.
Yeah, that's where the sea.
Suburbs of Las Vegas to the Grand Canyon.
That's where the sea used to be.
Yes, that's where the sea used to be. And all those nautiloids, billions of them, extend from the Grand Canyon up to the suburbs of Las Vegas. So why are they all in the same direction?
I'm going to show you.
Why do they all swim in the same direction at the same time? If it was not a catastrophic flood which pushed them all together and forced them into one direction because of their body shape. How? Tell me.
Because
don't guess.
That's the shape of the sea. So that's the direction that they're going to be in.
That's the shape of evolutionists saying it was a calm sea. So how could a population of nautiloids suddenly in one direction, in what all billions of them in one direction through a calm sea be swept away and get fossilized? You're not getting it.
That's the shape of the sea, or there could have been a river.
The shape of the sea, it was a calm sea.
All they have to do is die.
How could a calm sea produce these nautiloids into near billions of them in one direction only? Why are some why are they not distributed? Why are some nautiloids? Why aren't millions of nautiloids floating here, going into one direction only? Unless the flood swept them and forced them to force their bodies into that direction. What are the odds that all nautiloids would swim like that together at the same time, billions of them in a calm sea? Google it.
Lots of fish swim in the same direction at the same time.
Billions.
So you're saying
billions of nautiloids.
You think
you're
that
talking
they could,
about a few fish here.
Yeah, so that's impossible in a flood.
I'm talking about billions of nautiloids here.
Can I even get a sentence in? So if this picture is accurate and it shows the sea going through America, all they would have to do is just die and float to the bottom.
Look at that. Is that the Tapit sandstone? Those brown? Am I right? Are these the Tapit sandstone, if I'm not mistaken? Because if evolution is true, there should... Can you get it back to the other map? Okay. And do you know that we have... Okay, before I go to the paleocurrent map, paleocurrent data, you know what paleocurrent data is?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, let's pretend, just pretend. I'm not sure if this is the Tapit sandstone. Let's pretend. It looks like the Tapit sandstone because because the Tapit sandstone is the same color with the Coconino sandstone, color desert, the African desert, color desert. So this is the Tapit sandstone. Okay, so if evolution were true, why are there gaps? Millions of years of Tapit sandstone should cover the entire America and the world. Why are there gaps?
I'm not sure what gaps you're referring to.
Not just there. Okay. millions of years of Tapit sandstone, okay, here in this, for millions of years, they stack up together. So if they stack up together in the whole world, why do we find a huge gaps here? Why do we find these bluish color here? They should all be uniform. Is uniform the correct English? We should find them all here. It should all be colored brown. Explain that. Worldwide. Worldwide is not just North America. That's North America.
We should expect more uniform, more homogeneous layers
exactly.
under a flood. Under a flood.
That's my point. That's my point. Don't change subject. That's my point.
Under a flood. So can I address a couple things you said first?
We would expect sediments, some of the sediments, okay, we would expect some of the sediments would be deposited up to this area only. Okay, look at the west side of it. The west side of it is where the Grand Canyon is located. Okay, there in Nevada and Utah, somewhere there. And the east side is the Appalachians area. Okay, so for example, you would a huge tidal wave, this time a huge tidal wave carrying sediments go to the continent. Okay, they go to the continent. Now, it will lose momentum, right? When it's running, it would lose momentum, right? And if it loses momentum, what will happen? It will stop. That is why there are gaps. Look at that. There are gaps because they would lose momentum. Right? They would lose momentum. We're talking about the whole North America here, from Los Angeles to New York. So why isn't it, for millions of years, it should all be brown? Why is it not all brown? We find this worldwide. That means a flood did it. The flood, hundreds of feet, did it and lost its, and then stop at these borders here. That's blue. They would lose momentum. Explain that. Worldwide, it's not only the Tapit sandstone. Okay, it's all the 6 mega sequence of rock layers are like that. Explain that. Another trade secret from evolutionists. I read most of their books. Answer that.
Answer why there are gaps, but where there's
Don't
land?
guess. Don't guess.
I don't understand your question. If what
you
you're saying
understood.
is true, if what you're saying is true, then people would hire you to find minerals instead of other people, but they don't, because you're wrong, because you can't model it.
Again,
yeah, and you can't answer it because it's a complete creation killer. Your argument is destroyed just like that. Just like that.
Moderator. Isn't he going back off topic? How many times did he say creation is from a can't answer something? You're going to say, I'm not a geologist.
Wow, this is how we know geology works.
You say I'm not a geologist, so I'm wrong about this. Explain why there are gaps. Explain why there are gaps. Right now, explain why there are gaps.
I haven't talked in 5 minutes, man.
Oh, explain.
You're going to talk over me again.
Because you're not explaining.
You wouldn't
you
even
just
let me
went over
get
another
one sentence out. Wouldn't even let me get one sentence out.
Oh, go.
So I'm gonna keep waiting for you to stop talking. I'm gonna wait for you to stop talking.
Go.
You still can't stop talking. Okay. So, if that were true, you would have a model that would be able to make predictions accurately. You don't have that. So there's a couple things that you said that I wanted to address. There's a couple things you said I wanted to address, and you're getting angry because you can't address any of it. So
do not bait and switch. Answer this question. Why do we find all rock layers like this worldwide? Why are they gaps?
Like what? Gaps in what?
I don't know if it's a language barrier or just trying to pretend to be dumb here or something. If there are millions of years of land accumulating sand for millions of years in all continents of the world, we should get back to the other slide. Okay? Millions of years. all tapete sandstone in the world should be seen this color. All of it should be color brown.
This isn't supposed to be accurately representing.
Coconino sandstone is like this too,
this
but its configuration is different.
This is not representing what kind of stone there is.
You don't know what they're talking about. If there are
this is not a map of the stone type. This is a map.
I am talking my best English here now. If there were millions of years of this tapete sandstone.
I'm gonna start timing how long you're talking.
Okay, here I'll step in here.
Geologist, that's why I'm wrong, right?
I'll step in here just as moderator real quick. What we'll do is we'll take it slow. We definitely want to make it equal time for both participants. Jeremy, if you do have a specific question, if you want to just formulate it the best you can and direct it at Snake, and then we'll allow Snake to answer it in a way and in a fashion that he sees fit.
I already gave him 3 questions and he did answer all of them.
Do you understand what he's asking?
Do you want to get back to the Himalayas because you cannot answer this? Because you did answer the Himalayas before, right? And you are satisfied. Do you want me to debunk that?
Unless you guys want to move to another topic in relation to the flood. I mean, do you guys feel like you've...
Well, I wanted to address 2 things he said.
Okay. So what we'll do is we'll allow Snake to take as much time as he needs to address those things that he feels need to be addressed, and then we'll allow Jeremy to respond in the same manner. Jeremy, you'll be able to take as much time as you'd like as well. Okay, go ahead, Snake.
Oh, answer this, Snake. Do not say I'm not a geologist. Excuse.
Okay. So you said why don't we find whales in the Grand Canyon is because it stops before the whales evolved. So
again, please come again. Come again.
We should be able to find mammals in every layer. That's why we don't find whales in the Grand Canyon, is because there aren't any layers that mammals were in the Grand Canyon. At least not the whale.
I think you heard the elevations argument already, right?
So,
if I were a clever engineer, which I am not, I'm not an engineer. If I were a good designer like God, okay, I would put, for example, all reptiles at this exact location only. Okay? So why would I do that?
So it's not a natural flood.
This reptile will not.
So you're saying he has divinely intervened after the flood to put all the reptiles in the same area? No. Because reptiles don't behave like that. Reptiles do not behave like that.
No. Do not.
Reptiles don't behave like that.
Do not tell me I'm using the supernatural here. I said there was only one supernatural event during the flood. When God broke up the fountains of the great deep. Do not misrepresent what I said.
This is what a contradiction feels like, because you literally just said
Let me finish. I'm answering your question.
God put all the reptiles in the same place, which isn't what happens. Reptiles don't behave like that. So the only explanation is for God to do it.
Okay, reptiles. You want reptiles? Okay. Let's go. All right. If I were a clever designer, I would put reptiles in one location only. A plateau stretching about 1,000 to 2,000 miles with an elevation of 100 feet. But these different types of reptiles live on a different location. Okay, sorted. Or maybe not sorted. I can give you 2 scenarios. Okay, sorted or not so sorted. In this particular plateau stretching 1,000 to 2,000 miles with an elevation of 100 feet. You know why? If I'm a good designer, why will I do that? So that the reptiles will not interfere with the dinosaur layer. So that the dinosaurs and the reptiles could live separately together so that they will not conflict.
That's not what happens. They mix in the same layers.
Reptiles are buried together with some mixed ups. Do not try to fool me.
Yeah, they're
Sorry-
in the
sorry
same
for
layers as
being harsh.
dinosaurs. So what you just described is not what we observe. So and the other thing I wanted to
reptiles are
address,
in dinosaur layers?
the other thing I wanted to
Reptiles are
address,
in dinosaur layers?
the other
You're
thing
not paying attention.
the other
I
thing I
said
wanted to
there are
address
particular
was
reptiles in this.
that all the nautiloids facing in the same direction would not be possible in a global flood. The global flood would toss and turn them and mix them up in all different directions. So that was the other thing I wanted to address.
A tsunami would. Why
What
are we
flood?
going back to the nautiloids again?
Go
Because you
hang
can't
out-
answer them.
Go
The
hang out in a flood.
the tsunami would push all the nautiloids in one direction. That's what happens. That's what happened to the Indonesian tsunami.
Go hang out in a
Did you
flood
not see
and
the
see how.
Indonesian tsunami, or you were just a baby at that time?
Go hang out in a flood and see how long you're pointing in the same direction.
Huh?
Go hang out in a flood and see how long you can face the same direction. Because that's not what happens in
I'm sorry, I'm
floods.
not getting it. I'm not getting it.
We have video footage of what floods do, and that's not what happens.
Why? Why? This is CPT. Don't use uniformitarianism. There are different types of tsunamis. Don't you know that?
Have you ever seen a tsunami
Do you know how they
hit
form?
something that didn't turn
Some
things around?
just form like this. Some form like this. You don't know that?
Have
The
you ever
Indonesian
seen-
tsunami was different. It was due to an earthquake. Can we get back to the reptiles thing?
Yes.
Okay, here, let's do.
You can answer
Okay, let's
something,
do
you
this
keep on going
because
to other topics.
we got a couple comments from the chat, just so everybody listening and watching can understand what the two debaters are saying. Let's start with, say, Snake, whether you have an objection or something you want to answer, or a question you want to throw at Jeremy. Then we'll give Jeremy equal time to answer it and address it, and we'll kind of go from there. And then we'll wrap up this section, because the final topic I believe that you guys wanted to discuss was post-flood speciation. But let's do that. Let's try and keep.
He already asked so many questions. I only asked a few. It's like he asked 5, I asked 3.
How would you,
It's not fair.
Snake? How would you,
Reptiles.
Snake? What would you think is fair? Did you feel like you had enough questions and maybe answer a couple from Jeremy, or is there a couple things you felt like you wanted to address that Jeremy said, or how do you feel you wanted to proceed?
I think I've addressed
Reptiles.
everything so far, so we can move on.
You
to
didn't even
reptiles.
answer my brown, the map a while ago.
The color of the
And
map
I answered
isn't.
the whales.
The color of the map doesn't matter.
The Tapit sandstone. Doesn't matter because you cannot answer. Okay. Now, reptiles on the exact same location on a plateau stretching 1,000 to 3,000 and an elevation of 1,000 feet, so that all types of reptiles can stay there, but in different locations. That is why we don't find all the reptiles buried together. Some of them are mixed up. Some here, some here, some here, some here. Because at that huge plateau, okay, with an elevation of 100 feet, and 1,000 to 2,000 miles could house a lot of different types of reptiles. Get it?
I'm not sure I
If I
do.
were a good designer, I'd do that. And God is a far greater designer than I am. But this is one scenario you answer. So the shallow deep marine life we talked about. Now we talk about the land creatures, reptiles. So they were buried next, more or less. Why? Because I already said it, 100 feet elevation.
There
Answer
are reptiles, including dinosaurs, in the same layers as dinosaurs.
I have no problem with that.
So why are you saying that they were buried in different locations?
What?
I don't understand what your point is about them being on a raised plateau in a different location.
Do you want reptiles and dinosaurs to live together and fight?
They did.
But they shouldn't. Because it was pre-flood. I'm talking about pre-flood here.
Okay.
And I'm trying to explain the order of the fossils here. Why its elevation is 100 feet and it's 1,000 to 2,000 miles. And
Is
why
the Bible
why there are
showing
different ecosystems within that plateau.
What scientific evidence do you have to say that?
I said this would. What scientific evidence? My scientific evidence is the geologic column.
Which you can't predict with your methods. Only modern geologists can predict with their methods.
Predict. Here we go again. Every time you cannot answer, you say predict. I'm not a geologist.
It's a glaring hole.
Of course you can predict. For example, of course. We can predict or retrodict also.
Then you would be
so
getting
why are you
tired.
avoiding these reptiles right now? And then let's go to the dinosaur. Or let's say God also put all the dinosaurs in this exact location, only living on a huge plateau again, stretching about let's say 5,000 miles because dinosaurs are bigger, and some are, of course there's some smaller dinosaurs with an elevation of 200 feet. Reptiles 100 feet, dinosaurs 200 feet. This is my scenario.
That just sounds like a story you made up. Where are you getting that evidence?
I said, if I am an intelligent God, that's what I would do. So the dinosaurs and reptiles won't fight. And pre-flood, those animals did not fight much.
Yeah, well, we found dinosaurs eating lizards. We found lizards inside of dinosaur stomachs.
We also found birds inside dinosaurs.
Yeah.
How do you explain that?
Because birds are dinosaurs.
But
they're gonna exist in the same area because they are.
They evolved separately. Come on, let's go back on topic, please.
Yeah, so that's like asking why there are still wolves if they're dogs.
Why are there wolves but there are still? Why are you shifting topic? What does that have to do with this? I'm trying to explain to you. If I were a smart engineer, I would put all reptiles here and all dinosaurs here, and there would be mixed up sometimes because some reptiles might suddenly go to dinosaur territory, and some dinosaurs may sometimes go to reptile territory by accident or something. But more or less, all dinosaurs are here. More or less, reptiles are here. And within that plateau of the reptile, which is 100 feet and 1,000 to 2,000 miles, then there are some species of reptiles here, within the plateau, just like dinosaurs. Smaller dinosaurs live here, bigger dinosaurs live here on the same plateau, stretching 5,000 miles with an elevation of 200 feet. That's why they were next to be buried. First one, 100 feet, reptiles. Next one, 200 feet, dinosaurs. And that is what we find in the fossil record. That is my evidence.
That's not what we find in the fossil record. So while we're telling stories, if I was a smart engineer with the power of God, I wouldn't even bother killing all those innocent animals and children. I would just get rid of the people I didn't want.
I heard this second time before.
So if I was a smart engineer, I wouldn't waste all that time and life.
You say something else.
If I was a smart engineer,
do not do that. If you don't know, just say you don't know.
If I was a smart engineer, I wouldn't.
I will not mock you if you don't know.
I wouldn't kill off 90% of my perfect design if I was a smart engineer.
Because of sin. Here we go again.
The animals were sinful.
What
sin did the mosasaurs commit?
Moderator, different topic. He's going to another different topic.
What sin did the velociraptors commit?
Huh?
What sin did the velociraptors commit?
Well, why the hell should we care about the velociraptors? God's focus is humans.
God obviously wanted them dead.
Obviously wanted them dead.
Okay, here, gentlemen.
What are we talking about here?
Let's do this just because we did have a couple more topics we wanted to touch on. I think we've discussed this specific topic in great detail. The audience is really enjoying. Actually, everyone's having a lot of fun. There's a lot of people in the live chat, so I want to thank you guys for that. Why don't we can do one of two things. We can give both Snake and Jeremy just a minute.
I'm already pissed.
What we can do is
I'm already pissed. You said you were going to rapid speciation after the flood, right? Standing for truth. Can't believe this debate has become like this. Sorry, Snake.
Well, I mean, it's just what happens when people disagree. It's all right.
Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry. Forgive. Forgive.
Yeah.
So what do we do?
You want to move on
Standing for truth,
to
what do we do? Rapid speciation.
Yeah,
Do something. Or
well,
the methods.
If you'd like, you could wrap up, and because I know it got a little bit passionate there. It's good though. It was very good back and forth on these issues and topics. If you guys wanted to, you could sum up your thoughts on that portion for a minute, just to kind of wrap it up, and then we can jump into the rapid speciation to kind of conclude and wrap it up there, if you'd like.
There's nothing more I can say about the order of the fossils, because Snake just failed a lot over there. So I'd rather we go to rapid speciation. He could not even address this reptile dinosaur thing.
I thought I did address it because we don't.
No, you didn't. I gave you evidence. Geology column is my evidence. We don't know what the pre-flood world looks like. If you evolutionists assume this, assume that in your papers, we can also assume and guess what was during the pre-flood. That is how we explain the geologic column with the elevation and the miles, the sorting. That's how I do it. That's how engineers today do it. They sort things. They do not just jumble things up.
Yeah, and we don't see what you're describing. And there's a simple way that we can test whether your version of events is accurate or the scientific version of events is accurate. And we've been over that test several times. So
yeah, we can test it. We already tested it in the Grand Canyon.
And the creationists failed that test.
No, we did. Coconino sandstone, for example. Do you want me to elaborate on the Coconino sandstone? Do you know about the Coconino sandstone?
Unless you want to move on.
Oh, so you want to avoid it now?
It's up to you.
It's up to you. You want it to make it harder for you? You want me to make it harder for you? Do you know what the Coconino sandstone is?
I've heard of it.
Okay.
Hey, so if you're going to take a break, we can bring Neffy in here or let Landon speak too. So maybe you need a break there, Jeremy.
Let us finish the Coconino sandstone first, okay?
All right.
Okay. Where is the Coconino sandstone located? I'm not a geologist too.
I don't know.
Okay. Do you know there are crossbeds angled there? Do you know there are crossbeds over there? You know what crossbeds are?
Crust beds?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know that we can measure? We predicted that the Coconino sandstone was deposited by underwater sand dunes, because evolutionists say it was a desert formation. It was formed by a desert sand. Okay. And you don't even know this. And do you know we also have empirical data that crossbed angles of the Coconino sandstone is consistent with it's not consistent with the desert forming them. You know how we know why? Because the angle of the crossbeds of the underwater sand dunes is always 30 degrees. Its angle always 30 degrees. When it's angle.
So?
And the angle. All right, let me explain a little better. The angle of the crossbeds of under sand dunes is always 30 degrees. Okay, underwater sand dunes is always 30 degrees. We predicted that the Coconino sandstone was deposited by water, because evolutionists say the Coconino sandstone was deposited by sand. It was a desert before. But we creationists say it is not. We predicted it is deposited by the global flood. Now, that's what our prediction. We said we don't have prediction. Okay. Now, I'll give you this one. Now, the angle of crossbeds of underwater sand dunes is always 30 degrees. Get it? It's always 30 degrees. And the angle of the crossbeds in the Coconino sandstone is the angle of the crossbeds of the underwater sand is always 30 degrees, and the angle of crossbeds in the Coconino is less than 30 degrees. So it was deposited by water, not desert wind. Because stable deserts, okay, their crossbed angle is always 33 to 34 degrees. So here we can empirically test if it's deposited by water or by sand or desert. That is a confirmed prediction of our model. You can go check the crossbed angle yourself.
How is that an
And water,
exclusively
underwater sand dunes. Google it.
How is that an exclusively creationist model? Because they've done that with just regular geology. It's not an exclusive creationist
No,
prediction.
standard geology. All geologists know this. All geologists
so it's
know
not
this.
a creationist
The
prediction.
angle
Okay.
of the of
All right. So problem solved. It's not a creationist prediction. It's just a regular geology prediction.
It is our prediction. We predict those layers were laid down by water. And underwater sand dunes, their angle is 30 degrees. So it was deposited by water, not by desert wind or something. Because if it was deposited by desert wind, the angle should be 33 to 34 degrees.
So you just described just regular geology.
So it's not a desert. Evolutionists say it was a desert. The Coconino sandstone was a desert. That's what they say. What we say is it's not a desert. It is formed by the flood. And we today are able to measure desert deposition. The crossbeds of the Grand Canyon is always less than 30 degrees. And we measure the desert wind in a stable desert, that they're always 33 to 34 degrees. That is 2 to 3 degrees difference. So so it's a underwater deposition, the Coconino. And also we have evidence that the desert of the Coconino or the deposition came from the Appalachian Mountains, because we know Appalachian Mountains has desert and the floods swept the Appalachian Mountains. There are features in the Appalachian Mountains which we see in the Coconino sandstone.
Yeah, I'm looking at a geological survey of it. It's just regular geology. It's not creationist specific at all.
Which one?
Coconino.
You're not answering my question. The angles.
What about the angles?
Sand dunes, desert, underwater.
You're just saying words.
33 to 34 degrees, and and if it was deposited by water, those crossbeds should be 30 degrees or less. But we find it's 33 to 34, so it wasn't deposited by desert wind or desert wind. Yeah. Answer that. Why are all the crossbeds less than 30 degrees in the Grand Canyon? If it was a desert deposited by wind.
It probably wasn't, and they used geology to prove that. Just like they would use geology to find minerals.
I just gave you a testable prediction that we made a long time ago, and then you, because you cannot answer, you are trying to bait and switch again.
No, you guessed that a certain place was made by ocean deposits. Then scientists.
I didn't guess anything.
Hold on. So you're saying creationists guessed this, and then it was a prediction as a guess, and then some scientists, some geologists came along and confirmed what also modern geologists are saying. So you just agree with modern geology on that site. Of
course, they got their own explanation.
That's not a novel prediction.
That is what we observed. They have their explanation, their rescuing device, because creationists predicted it. So They have to come up with something. What caused those crossbeds to be like that? Oh my goodness!
Yeah. So it's
Why
cherry
is it?
picking.
Why
So,
isn't it 33 to 34 degrees?
so you
Because
happen to
33 to
agree.
34 degrees is
You happen
consistent
to
with
agree with.
desert zones.
You happen to agree with geologists one time, so you cherry pick that one time instead of.
Cherry pick. I agree with geologists on the cross mantle a while ago. I said it was your model, remember? Do not contradict what you said.
Where did Snake go?
Do not contradict what you said.
Huh. Oh, there's Snake. I don't know what happened. I have no idea what happened there, Snake.
Yeah, me neither.
Because he cannot answer my questions.
What was I saying? So you cherry picked one instance where you agreed with mainstream geology, and then you ignore all the instances where mainstream geology is able to find things that creationist models can't. That's just cherry picking.
Hey! The crustal mantle thing that we talked about, I said it was your model. Remember? Rewind this video and then we'll see. Standing for truth, rewind this video. Let's show Snake I'm right. I use evolutionary data over there. I know how, when, and how.
Then it's not a creationist prediction.
No. We predicted it.
And so did modern geologists.
You said I cherry pick.
Yeah, what about all the times where you can't predict? What about all the times where you can't find the oil or the minerals because they don't understand the rock layers?
Oil and minerals again. My goodness. Moderator.
Yeah.
The heck is this?
When your model can't predict much.
And
the only thing you can predict
is evolutionary data, but I also use an evolutionary data to debunk.
That's like predicting the sun will come up.
The thing I was talking about, the crust more dense, that is your data. That is evolutionary data. I did not cherry pick. The nautiloid. It was evolutionists. You can go to the Grand Canyon and see those nautiloids, and evolutionists recognize that. It's obvious.
So why are you cherry picking that data and not accepting the rest of the data?
He lost. I really don't want this to
cherry
be a
picking is a
competition,
fallacy,
but,
so that's
I'm sorry to say. So moderator,
cherry picking is a fallacy, so I'm still waiting for your point.
I did not cherry pick. The Coconino is your data.
Exactly my point. It's not your data, so you're still left with no novel predictions.
It's your data, and the cross mantle thing was also your data. Do not lie.
So
was it your data? Those cross configuration that we talked about? And those red wall limestone with a nautiloid. Oh yeah, I now remember. Yes, it was red wall limestone. And miles. And geologists think it was deposited by calm sea. Geologists think it was a calm sea.
Yeah,
this is all evolutionary literature. I am using evolutionary literature.
Things can still die in a calm sea.
Those cases here. I am familiar with these subjects very well, so I do not need sometimes creation material. I can write something down and let somebody peer review it myself. Do not lie. Everything is recorded here. Don't worry. We'll see.
If I'm not mistaken, you
said we're going to speciation.
The modern geological data. Sure.
I think Snake thinks speciation is very strong evidence. Or we're gonna stop this now because you already lost.
Okay, here, let's do this. So since we just concluded that portion on geology, the fossil record, the ordering in fossils, for example, just to name a few things you guys touched on. Like I said, it was just very fast-paced, engaging. So the audience is enjoying. We still got a lot of people in the live chat having fun. So why don't we jump into post-flood speciation? I imagine Snake has a few objections to that. Snake, if you want to just take some time and kind of go over what your issues may be, and then we'll just have a good back and forth on that specific topic. We'll allow Jeremy to address your possible objections, or just if you have a question too, Snake, you can kind of keep it free-flowing dialogue. Go ahead.
Yeah, we got also Jungle joined us, so if you want to add to this, I like, because Jungle has some good info. I'd like to hear from him too.
Yeah, I like the flood geology, and to me, it's very clear how the sediments are stacked on top of each other, one on top of the other, like pancakes, and extend for hundreds of miles all around. And the point that Jeremy was saying earlier, that the continents float, that's a good point. And they don't go up and down like merry-go-rounds, like they would have to if
Exactly.
the thing, the other evolutionary belief was true. And there's no mechanism to make them go up and down like merry-go-rounds, So it's clear there was a flood.
It should be stable.
And then when the water settled into the oceans, the oceans opened up, and that's when there was all the tectonic movement and pushing things around, and that's why the ocean floor is new construction, comparatively speaking.
It's younger.
Right.
Ocean floor is younger than the sediments, the continents.
And we have samples of everything that was living at the time of the flood in the sediment layers. And to me, it's not hard to see that it was from the global flood. It's really very straightforward and simple. That was a question.
It's interesting
I actually,
why most trained geologists don't think that.
The question I asked Ken Ham when I talked to Ken Ham at a breakfast one time, I said, well, why don't people see that there is a global flood? I mean, the evidence is there. Why can't people see there was a global flood? Go ahead, sorry.
What did he say? What did Ken Ham answer?
Yes.
Worldview.
Was that?
Worldview. What did Ken Ham answer to your question?
Oh, he said, yeah, they were. See, I forget. He quoted scripture. I forget which one it was exactly, but it was that they just refused to believe.
Yeah, 2 Peter 3 probably.
I'd say it's a worldview thing. I won't use the Bible because Nick's gonna say, using the Bible. I'm gonna say it's a worldview thing.
Yeah. Well, what we're looking for is truth. We're looking for truth in the facts, and if we find truth and facts in the Bible, so be it. And there's truth and facts in geology too, and biology and everything.
Yeah, it's a pretty simple way to test which models are right, though.
It's not complicated.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know that continent?
So how come nobody hires creationist geologists to do their geology?
Well, for one thing, there's not too many. There's not too many creationist geologies in the field of looking for oil.
Because it doesn't work.
No, you're making things up.
If it worked, people would be able to make money off of it.
You're making things up. It has nothing to do with how the layers are from the result of the global flood. It has nothing to do with that.
Yeah, if you understand how they were laid down, you can figure out what's in there.
It's an argument just to try to disprove creation, try to disprove the flood, but you can't disprove the flood because you don't even have an origin from where the flood came from or where the sediments came from, because like he was saying, they're floating, and how would you get all the sediments to float uphill?
I left a a storage crate outside, and it had a sediment layer within about a week.
And it floated uphill and deposited on the continents. I mean, on the higher part.
So where did the sediment layer come from?
The sediment
that
layers
I observed in a week.
The sediment layers are on the continents. They're not in the ocean. They're on the continents.
Yeah, I live in Colorado, so there's no ocean around here. So how did I get a sediment layer in 1 week?
How did they get there on top of the continents? How did all the sediment layers? I mean, why do the continents even consist of sediment layers?
Well, I've observed that a flood does not have to do it.
You can't answer the question, see?
Yeah,
it's
for one thing,
you don't have a source for the sediments for one thing, and another thing, they're stacked on top of each other. Yes, if it's if all the sediments are shifting by a global flood, yes, we do, and then the ocean sank down after the sediments were deposited.
You have to take a chunk from the layers and make them into sediments. That's the same thing that gradualist geology is doing too. It's just doing it gradually instead of whole chunks at a time.
But gradualist geology is not going to stack consecutive sediment layers on one on top of the other over a mile, 2 miles deep.
Well, the experts who can actually make money in predictions would disagree with you.
I don't care about experts.
I know
address the issue. Address what I just said. Expert appeal to authority means nothing. It's worthless.
I'm not appealing to authority.
It's useless.
I'm
it's
appealing
your
to
authority.
Results.
It's your authority that's wrong. Now you tell me how those sediments got stacked over a mile deep, 2 miles deep, without a global flood. Consecutive layers of sediment, one on top of the other.
So I just told you that I observed it happening without a flood.
No, you didn't observe it.
I absolutely did.
Consecutive layers over a mile deep, one on top of the other.
So if I can get
and without borders in between those in the middle.
If I can get a little bit of layer in 1 week, then I can get a bigger layer in more weeks.
Well, I was ignoring your experiment. What was your experiment again?
It wasn't even an experiment. I have a storage bin outside, and it now has a sediment layer on top of it, just because it was sitting outside.
Yeah,
it did not have a sediment layer on it when I bought it.
Yeah, but it's not a mile deep or 2 miles deep.
Yeah, but guess what? Guess what? That was 1 week. So what happens if it's more weeks than that? It's going to get deeper.
A sediment layer. Yeah, it's going to get deeper.
But why aren't there any erosion evidence? Evidence of millions of years between the sediments.
It's not going to be water deposited sediments over a mile deep.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be. You're the only one saying that every sediment has to be water deposited.
No, but
which is also untrue.
But you're not even looking at the evidence. The sediment layers are water deposited sediment. It's not a matter of what we want. They are water deposited, as he just demonstrated that they're all less than a 30-degree angle of the deposition.
And so what?
So they're water deposited.
Consistent with modern geology, not flood geology.
So they're water deposited sediment layers over a mile deep everywhere around the world.
There's water around the world.
No, the sediment layers that we're standing on are water deposited sediment layers over a mile deep everywhere around the world.
No, not all of them.
Yes.
Some of them.
They're all water deposited sediment layers.
You tried this last time we spoke, but you were wrong.
It doesn't matter if it's ash. It doesn't matter if it's wind-blown sand. It doesn't matter what it is. Everything was deposited by water over a mile deep.
You just said if it was deposited by a wind, then it was deposited by water. How can you possibly...
You're confusing yourself. You're confusing yourself. Listen carefully. You can have wind-blown sand deposited by water. It happens all the time. It's not complicated.
Then it wouldn't be wind-blown sand, it would be water deposited.
Why not? Why not?
Because if it goes into the water, then it's not the wind blowing it, it's the water moving it.
It is the angle.
This is
the angle proves
like a 2-year-old child.
The angle proves that it was water deposited. It's already been proved that it's water deposited So it doesn't matter if it's windblown sand.
I can prove to you that I can form a windblown sand sediment layer.
Are you going to ignore what I just said? It doesn't matter if it's windblown sand. It was deposited by water.
That's retarded.
No, it's not. The angle proves that it was
I know
deposited by
that
water.
even you.
That's not
You're saying-
retarded. You're saying it's retarded that the
either-
angle proves that it was deposited.
It either got there from wind or it got there from water. You're trying to tell me that if it got there from wind,
No, you're
then it
not.
got there from
You're
water.
confusing yourself
Those
and
are your
everybody
words.
else.
I'm just quoting you.
Listen carefully. Listen carefully. You can have desert sand, right? It's blown around by the wind, right? It can be deposited by water. It can be a flood can come and deposit it by water. How is that so hard to understand?
If it
Why
gets
do I have to
blown
keep
into the
repeating
water,
the same thing over?
if it gets blown into the water, then it's not wind deposited; it's water deposited.
But it's wind blown. It's wind blown sand that's deposited by water. It's not complicated.
It is the way that you're trying to phrase it.
No, it's not.
You said
If
it's
I can
wind
understand,
blown,
it's
but
easy to
water
understand.
deposited.
If I can understand, it's not that hard to understand. And it's all water deposited.
May I add something? There are 100-foot crossbeds also over there. Means it was deposited by water. 100-foot crossbeds.
Right.
You can ask a geologist, Nick. I am not
Don't-
even a geologist, and I
Don't
know
appeal
this.
to geology. You don't go down that road. You won't like it.
Yeah.
I studied it. I studied astronomy, geology, and genetics for 16 years.
So how come you disagree with it?
How come I didn't say I disagree with them. I agreed with them for so long.
Data, because
I'm using your own data against you. I'm
No,
using your own data against you,
doesn't
and you don't
bear
even
out-
realize it. You don't even realize I'm using your own data against you.
No,
Yeah.
I realize that you're cherry picking data and ignoring
not.
what actually
I did not cherry pick data. I did not cherry pick data. You check the angles at the crossbeds
I
yourself.
know you're cherry picking data, or else you
making
would
And
things
the
up.
crossbed
Data.
thing, it was an evolutionary. It is the configuration that is in evolutionary literature. It's in the books.
So you admitted that no creationist made that prediction. No creationist did the science. Only
Prediction
modern
again. Oh my
geologists.
goodness.
And you're ignoring
Trading
the
Force
data.
already told you about the subducting plates.
And you're ignoring the
Subduction
data.
prediction.
You're ignoring the data that proves that the flood is false, and that's a big
How
part.
so? How so? How is the flood false? After all the evidence we just showed you, how is the flood false?
You haven't showed me a single piece of evidence.
Yes, I showed you all kinds of
No,
evidence.
you didn't.
And you produced nothing. You produced nothing except that the wind-blown sands are blown by wind. That's the only thing you produce.
That's all I've tried to produce.
But
Geologists
because you can't prove any. Because you
a
can't prove anything.
geologist, a geologist can produce. Creation
A
geology.
geologist.
cannot
Speaking of
produce.
geologists,
So
what is
that's all
the
I-
what is the
that's my
amount?
entire
What is the
argument
amount?
about geology.
Speaking of geologists, what is the amount of sediment layers around the world? What is the volume of sediment layers around the world?
I have no idea.
Okay, then you can't tell us anything.
Yes, I can.
You don't
because
even
I know-
you don't
I know
even know what we're talking about. You don't even know what we're talking about. You have
You
no
don't
concept. You have
You
no
don't either.
concept of the volume of the sediment layers that we're talking about.
Nor do you. So
Yes, I do.
no, you don't.
I
You
know what the
absolutely do
volume
not.
is. I know what the volume is, and you don't.
I don't care.
Yeah, see that? See that? You don't care.
No.
Exactly. You don't
You
care about
memorize
what
the
the facts are.
number.
You don't
memorize the
care about what
number.
the facts are. All you do is
That
respond,
doesn't
blah
change
blah blah,
anything.
and no. That's all you do.
That
And
doesn't
you
change
can't
anything.
produce anything of your own. You can't produce any substance of your own.
No, you
All
can't.
you can do is say so and so said.
Creationism
such
has
and
not
such.
produced anything, which is why it was abandoned by geology. Because it cannot produce anything, but modern geology
produces-
can. And you can't get
produces-
around that. You can't get
it-
around that.
It produces corroboration of the historical history that we have as humans, history on Earth.
A historical history.
It corroborates the global flood
No, it
that
doesn't.
is in human history,
You can
and that
only say that
nobody
if you
can ever
show
deny,
data.
because all of our genealogies go back to the time of the flood.
No, they don't.
All of the calendars go back to the time of the flood. Zeus's genealogy goes back to the time of Noah. Everything goes back 5,000 years, and that's it. And then what? Then there's nothing. We all came from Noah. The
So
Y
how come-
chromosomes came from Noah. The A,
How
B,
come
C,
you
D,
can't
and
use
E
that
came
to
from
make
Noah.
money? How come you can't use that to find minerals
The ham.
that different models can? No, answer the question.
No, because I'm not working. I'm not looking for oil.
Right,
why.
because you can't find
I'm not
it.
looking for oil,
You
and then
can't.
I'm not.
You
I
can't.
don't know
You
where,
can't. It's not that you aren't, it's that you can't.
and neither are you.
I'm not a geologist.
Exactly.
They
So
can
why
look for
should I
oil.
have to be? So why should I have to be?
Not you, but
It still doesn't
creationism.
prove anything. It doesn't disprove the flood.
It
doesn't
proves that
disprove
the
anything.
non-flood model is more accurate than the flood model.
No, it's just a catchphrase. It's just a catchphrase,
It's
just
not a
for you to
catchphrase,
repeat, to
it's
convince
literally-
yourself,
You can't do it.
that the evidence of the flood, the layers of sediments
What's
aren't
my
there.
catchphrase? Can you repeat my catchphrase?
The what?
What's my catchphrase?
The thing about the finding oil, that no creationists find oil. They don't know how to find oil,
Or any minerals or any fossils.
No, the fossils
You can't
are the
prove-
same thing. You find
they'll be.
fossils wherever. I find fossils in Missouri walking on a stream.
No creationist has ever predicted a novel fossil. Evolution has. Thousands of times.
Oh, thousands of times now.
Hmm.
You just happen to
most fossils
spend your
are-
whole life looking for a fossil, and you found a telictolact or whatever it is.
Nope, it was we theorized exactly when it would happen, and then we know how the layers actually got there, and you don't.
Well,
so
that's
we were able
because-
to find, we were able to predict
knows that
if
that
evolution
everything
is
is
true,
found in
if
a certain
evolution is
place.
true, if evolution is true, and if geology,
No, it doesn't have to be
is
by
true,
evolution.
then we should find this type of animal. Then we found it.
But it doesn't
Creationism
have to
has
be
never
by
done such
evolution.
a thing.
It could be just a certain order that things are found in. It doesn't have to be
You
by
shall-
evolution.
You shall know the truth by the fruits that they bear.
It doesn't have to be because of evolution the sediment layers were deposited. That's
It
not.
doesn't
That's
have to
not
be, no.
right.
It doesn't have to be, no. But it is.
Okay, so it's not because
No,
the
it-
sediment layers are not because of evolution.
No, the fossil components are because of evolution.
No, there is no evolution. Everything appears from nowhere and disappears into nowhere. Everything is what it's ordered to be. There is no such thing as one thing turning into another.
Okay, would you like me to, would you accept Answers in Genesis as a source? Or what about creationministries.com?
There is no such thing as
they all
one thing
admit-
turning
they
into
all admit-
another.
No, the Answers in Genesis and Creation Ministries admit that. Would you accept those as sources?
No, you're twisting what they say.
No, I'll quote directly. So do you accept them as sources or not?
Do I accept what as a source? You didn't
Answers
quote.
in
You didn't quote
Genesis
anything.
or Creation Ministries.
You didn't quote anything.
I want to know if you accept them as a source. You want to know what it is.
I want to
before
know
you
if what you're
accept
saying
it.
is nonsense.
Yeah, so you can
So
say.
tell
that
me
you don't
what
trust it, you don't agree.
tell me what the thing is, and then I'll tell you if it's right or not. I'll tell you what I think anyway.
I'm asking if you accept them as a source.
I don't have to accept anybody as a source. Just tell me what it is, and I'll tell you.
Oh, okay. So, Answers in Genesis says that the entire weasel family and all otters and all badgers are from the same kind.
What's that got to do with anything? That's not nothing turning into another thing.
Yeah, it is. An otter is a completely different thing than a weasel. It has different muscle groups. There are weasels that have different muscle groups.
Well, that may or may not be true. I tend to think not because there were
Well, you're wrong.
different kinds. Listen
I
to
don't
me.
care what you think.
Let me
You're wrong.
finish what I'm saying. There's different kinds of birds on the ark. There's ravens and there's
Did I say anything
doves.
about birds?
What?
Did I say anything about birds?
Talking about what's the same kind. Not all birds are the same kind.
It says that mustelids are all the same kind, which includes weasels and otters. And they explicitly state this.
How about a greater grison, if you think you know so much? What about a greater grison? What is
Did
that?
Did I say anything about that?
What is a greater grison?
Did I say anything about that?
I'm saying, I'm
Why are
asking
you? Why are you?
I'm asking if
why are
you
you trying
know
to change the
about a
subject?
greater
Why are you
Grayson.
running away?
No, I'm not. I'm not
You
running
are.
away. I'm asking, I'm talking about exactly what you're talking about. Do you know what a greater Grayson is?
No. Why are you trying to change the subject?
I'm not changing the subject. I'm talking about the weasel family.
Yeah, if it's a weasel, then AIG says that it's all part of the same kind.
Well, a lot of them are, and some of them might not be. How's that?
I don't know how you would possibly tell that.
You look at the DNA. You look at the DNA, compare it, and see if there's any extra information.
Any
they could
extra
be.
information.
They could all be the same family. How about a badger? Is a badger a
Every
weasel?
species is a separate kind. Now you've just
Is-
debunked the arc.
Is a badger a weasel?
That's what Answers in Genesis claims.
Well, the badger's not the part of the weasel family. It's
Yeah,
not.
it is.
No, there's weasels, and then you're
So
confused.
how are you
They're
telling?
different. The honey badger,
But they're not
the honey
same.
badger and a badger is not the same thing. It's not the same kind of thing. It's not the same family.
That's what Answers in Genesis says. It says
No,
that otters evolved from weasels.
according to the classification, a honey badger is not the same thing as a badger. A honey badger is a weasel, and
Right,
a
and
greater
so is
Grayson is a weasel too.
And so is a badger.
I know there's different variations of the greater Grayson and the honey badger and the weasel, even in South America.
And so there are weasels in South America, and one of them has a set of muscles that no other mammal has in the entire world.
In South America.
Mm-hmm. It's called the Lincodon, the Patagonian weasel. Has muscle groups, and there's a sister weasel that looks exactly the same, except it just doesn't have those muscle groups in its fingers. And no other weasel has this. So this had to have been an evolved adaptation.
Well, it could be that certain parts of the genome were activated or deactivated.
That's exactly how it works.
No, that's not new information.
They already have the information to make muscles.
Then
they have the information to make muscles in different locations.
Then, well,
so
no,
that changes as they
that happens all the time.
Another muscle in a different location.
But that happens all the time.
Right.
But
so that's how otters evolved from weasels.
But it's not new information. It's from existing information.
None of evolution is new information.
So there is no evolution.
No, that's not how it works. That's a straw man.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No new information, and then there's no evolution. Because you have to have information to make feathers.
You're twisting the words.
You have to make
what did I actually say?
Feathers are not the same thing as scales. You have to have information for feathers. You have to have information for all different kinds of things. For all the organs that mammals have.
We can make scales transform into feathers just by putting a certain type of acid in them. It's the same material, and we can convert them directly.
If you have the instruction to make feathers, you can make feathers. Because they're not haphazardly made. Feathers are not a haphazard thing.
I said evolution doesn't just pop new information out of nowhere.
Thank you. So there's no evolution. Because you need every different organism has a different set of instructions.
Nope. Putting my thumb in a different location
is
not new information. That's just the same thumb in a different location.
Chimps have information that we don't have, and we have information that chimps don't have. So there's no evolution. They're one family, we're another.
We've observed new proteins being formed.
Why interrupt me?
Because that's been observed.
It's been observed that chimps have information that we don't have, and we have information that chimps don't have. So we're not from the same. We can't possibly be copied from the same ancestor.
That's not true, because dogs have information that wolves don't have, and wolves have information that dogs don't have.
No.
Yes.
It's vast amount. It's a lot of information.
Zebras have information that horses don't have, and
a lot of information. It's not just deletions. I'm not talking about deletions or activations or deactivations. It's information.
We've actually observed that kind of new gene sequences evolving in real time. So what you're saying is impossible has been observed in real time. So you're just wrong.
A gene sequence?
Yes.
Yeah, but it
Gene
doesn't.
sequences can change, and that causes new proteins.
It causes a new protein.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have a new protein, and then what?
Then it either works or it doesn't.
Oh, you either know what to do with it or you don't.
No one knows anything. These animals don't know what their biochemistry is doing.
The genome has to do things that work.
Mm-hmm.
And if it doesn't work,
Then it dies. It just disappears. So
yeah,
only the ones that work stick around.
Right, but there's different information in different living organisms that are not the same. In other words,
But we've proven that can evolve. We've observed it.
It doesn't matter. It's still going to copy the same information of the original ancestor or a variation of that. It's not going to copy information that's not there. The information for an elephant is not the same information for a dog.
Evolution is limited to the traits of the parent generation. That's true.
Right. So nothing can become something else. It can only be a copy of its ancestor.
How are you saying that? Because we can rearrange the existing traits. AIG admits that weasels can evolve into otters. They also admit that snakes can evolve from lizards. And if you'll let me, on my screen right now, I'm showing you how otters have a different foot shape than weasels. And certain weasels have different muscle groups. So we know that new arrangements of parts can come about from the same basic set of information. So we have genes that make bones. We have genes that make muscles. We have genes that can make fingers. And
do you ever consider they could be a different kind? They could be a different kind because on the ark you have different kinds of birds. You have ravens and you have doves. They're two different kinds of birds, but they're both birds.
But the problem with that is your standard of saying that if there's that level of difference, then you're not going to be able to fit everything on the ark.
No, there's
That's
still
why AIG actually groups their things the way they are.
There's still room. There's still plenty of room.
They'll cut up, if there's too many, they'll cut them up into separate groups because they know that they can't evolve that quickly. That would mean a new species every single year.
Hey fellas, so Jeremy has to go in here in a few minutes, and I really wanted him to or address this rapid speciation argument with Snake. If we can just get that done real quick, then Jungle will get right back to you too, and because you're doing a great job too. So if we can just get to that, it'd be awesome.
Oh,
the rapid, yeah.
I don't believe in real rapid speciation. I think there were more kinds on the ark than what we were first thought.
Yeah, Jeremy. I was saying Jeremy. I think he had a rapid speciation argument. I think for Snake, and I just wanted to make sure he got that out there.
I don't know. I don't know because Snake has not asked. What is his question? Snake, what is your question?
Did I ask a question?
I thought. Sorry, sorry. So, I thought you're gonna ask a question about rapid speciation.
I do have a couple problems.
How did millions of species form? How did millions of species form in just 6,000 years? Is that it? Because that is the common objection. I told you I'm reading evolutionary literature every day.
It's just that when you accept rapid speciation, then you're basically getting rid of this idea that species are in stasis.
Yeah.
Okay.
Species are in stasis. What do you mean?
If rapid speciation happens, species are in stasis.
Stasis meaning that they don't.
I know
change.
what stasis is,
Okay.
but I don't know what your question is.
So if you can rapidly speciate
Uh-huh.
within just a couple thousand years,
Uh-huh.
that means that there's no stasis.
Do you want hang on. Do you want a technical answer to that or a simple answer? Because I have to go to the hospital. I have to. There's something I have to do. What answer do you want me to give? Technical or simple?
Well, if you've got somewhere to be, I guess the simple one.
So what is your question again? How could millions of species? Is that it?
No, my question would be, how are you determining that they're not related or not?
So this is not rapid speciation anymore. This is identifying the kinds.
Yeah, but
I thought we were going to talk
would
about.
implicate. That would be how you find out which ones are rapidly speciating. Because, for example, the creationists have 6 blind snake kinds, not including all the other snake kinds. They didn't just have one type of blind snake. They have 6 snake kinds ranging from 2 species to 391 species for each of them. So
Okay.
they couldn't have said there's one blind snake kind. Otherwise, there would be a new species at least every 10 years.
Okay, let me answer that. Have you ever heard of sympatric speciation?
Yeah.
What does it mean? Don't guess. I know the answer.
Sympatric speciation?
Don't Google it. Answer now.
I'm trying to see if that's what I heard.
Yeah, because you're Googling it.
No. So it's sympatric speciation.
What does it mean?
It's when the species that you evolved from continues on while the new one evolves, like wolves and dogs.
Wrong. Sympatric speciation means, this is the answer to your question a while ago. Sympatric, this is just one example. I have more than 8 evidence against what you just said.
Let me finish. But go ahead.
You were already wrong in your explanation.
What?
Your explanation is already wrong. Your first 2 sentences are already wrong. All right, so continue. Go. Sorry.
In the same location, so it's the original population and a new species. Both continue in the same geographic region.
So let me summarize that. Let me make it simple. Let me tell you how it helps. Okay? There are a lot of samples I can give you how rapid speciation happened. Okay, but sympatric speciation, just one. I don't want to overwhelm you with my 8 data here. The 8 data in my mind here. Okay. Some parts of your answer more or less are correct, but your first answer was wrong. Your second part of the answer is correct. Sympatric speciation, meaning small population of creatures can split into different species, even if they don't live on the same area, even if they are without physical barrier. Okay, so they're living together, then speciate so quickly with ease. That's one scenario which happened in the past many times, because we do observe sympatric speciation today everywhere. And there are still 20 million species we haven't discovered, as they are predicting that. Okay, so for example, let's say, there are many examples. There are hundreds of examples actually, and all of them are from the evolutionary literature. So thank you, evolutionists, for giving me your own evidence to debunk you. An example I recall are insects. Whatever insect, I forgot which. Maybe all of them. I think most of them. Let's say they eat a particular food. Fruits, for example. An insect eating fruits, which uses the fruits of their plants for mating. You following?
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Insects eating fruits which use the fruits of their parent of their plants for mating. Okay? Then another insect group, but of the same species, thrive fruits. I forgot. Thrive fruits on another host plant. Okay. Sorry, I forgot to say host plant on the first species, on the host plant. Then their food choices. Okay, food choices alone. Okay, I can name a lot of scenarios here which rapid speciation happened. But I would like to stress a point. Rapid speciation, most species that we see today happened 100, 500 to 1,000 years after the global flood, which I have no time to explain. But when I explain it, you'll be shocked. So most of the species today are remnants of the once massive speciation, millions of species forming after the flood. And I could use DNA to prove that. All right.
How are the majority of species after the flood if the majority are buried in what's apparently what you're calling the flood?
Why are you changing topic again?
Because you're contradicting yourself.
Where? I'm in the insect thing.
You just said most of the species speciated after the flood, and yet
Yes.
most of them are buried by what you're claiming is the flood.
The insects weren't on the ark. They didn't have to be on the ark.
I didn't say anything about insects.
He's talking about insects.
That is why we find many extinct animals today.
And there's a lot.
Yeah, so were they killed by the flood or were they killed after the flood? Were most fossils killed after the flood or during the flood?
Oh, sorry.
Were most fossils killed after the flood or during the flood?
No, what we were talking about the animals that came out of the ark, those pairs of animals, right? Do we agree with that, Snake? I'm sorry for my tone, really. Forgive me for tonight. I'm just sick. That is why I am acting this way. Sorry, forgive me.
Well, here, I'm just
time,
going to clarify real quick. So Snake is asking, based on your position, that the species we see today are the remnants of the species in the past. But Snake is pointing to the fossil record, which we see a lot of death and extinction. So
because they were not carried into the ark.
Because he's asserting
because they were not.
Well, just one sec. Am I explaining that correctly, Snake?
He just said something about how most of the species died after the flood.
No species, only a few species died before the flood because the pre-flood world was, its environment was better.
Yeah, but didn't you say that most species died after the flood?
No, I didn't say that.
A lot died during the flood or in the flood.
I didn't say that, Snake. Sorry. I didn't say that.
I thought you said that. That's what I was trying to clarify.
No, I didn't. I'm sorry if maybe it's an English stammering. It's a language barrier. Sorry, forgive me.
No, that's okay. I mean that's why I ask questions. Just
so what is your question? So
I think what he's trying to say. I think what Snake is trying to say that if there was so much speciation after the flood, then why not believe in evolution?
Okay. Is that it, Snake? Okay.
Okay. I would say that. Yeah.
I already gave one scenario, Sympatric Speciation, but I'll just put it in a nutshell of what comes to mind because I never prepare for debates. I never take notes. Never. All right. During the pre-flood world, the Bible said, Snake, please do not. I know if I say the Bible, you might jump or something. People live hundreds upon hundreds of years, meaning the pre-flood world's condition of the environment was far better than post-flood. That is why speciation before the flood is almost zero, because of the environmental conditions are okay. And we know one of the mechanisms of speciation is mutations. And I'll give you another mechanism later. The pre-flood world even had, oh crap, I'm using Hovind's argument here. I do not use his argument usually because I'd rather not say why. The pre-flood world even had much larger creatures than today in the fossil record. We found today like sharks that are so big and large animal fossils today, proving the environment was far better pre-flood, right? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
it's like a worldwide hyperbaric chamber which Michael Jackson used, if the theory is true. It's like a worldwide hyperbaric chamber. Yeah, it's because the world was still fresh, almost fresh, and almost newly created. Okay, so there was almost no speciation before the flood, and you already know from your other debates that God put heterozygosity and homozygosity sites, hetero and homozygosity sites on animals and us humans, okay, in order for them to speciate and adapt. Okay, you already know that because you've been debating us for so long already, right? Oh, man, I'm really tired.
So
But yes.
if almost no speciation happened before the flood, wouldn't that mean that most of the fossils evolved post-flood?
I call that microevolution after the flood. Yes. And there's no sign of any fossils at the Precambrian layer. Sorry, stammering again. The Precambrian layer is devoid of fossils. That was the pre-flood rocks.
Yeah.
Google it.
Yeah.
What layer does the flood stop at?
The great unconformity is where the flood layers began.
Yeah. So
and the Precambrian is the world before the global flood.
So where do they stop?
What do you mean? Where did they stop?
The great unconformity.
So everything above the great unconformity is post-flood.
Post-flood, or by the flood.
The great unconformity is like this, right? And then the Tapit sandstone during the flood, scrape it, something like that.
Yeah, just scrape it all off. Just scrape it.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
But
so why are we talking about the flood again?
But every fossil caught in the rock layers must have been killed by the flood, right?
Right. But there was variation.
Those species all must have existed before the flood.
There was quite a bit of variation before the flood, but what we see today is, I think, if you compare the DNA, that you'll find differences in different kinds. That's what I believe. That's a creationist prediction.
But what differences? What's
different
instructions? What's the smallest difference?
Different information. I'm not sure.
Is one nucleotide enough difference to say they were different kinds?
I'm not sure exactly what it would be or what to look for, but I'm sure there is a difference, because the nature of one animal to another is quite a bit different. And
so you're sure, but you can't say why.
Yeah, it's a creationist prediction. I believe that if you compare the DNA side by side, that one is a copy of an ancestor and the other is a copy of another ancestor.
But you wouldn't know at what point it's too much difference or too little difference?
No, I think that you should be able to tell. There might
How?
Well, the problem is that there's so much information and that we can't. We have a hard time. We have a hard time understanding what the information is and what the difference is. Go ahead, Jeremy.
So where are we, Snake? The pre-flood world was far different environmentally, like a hyperbaric chamber, as I recall. Did I say that? Michael Jackson may have used that, because the world was still almost newly created. So before the flood there was a little speciation, but not too much. The flood changed the world for the worse after it happened, due to catastrophic plate tectonics during the flood. It damaged the atmosphere. It destroying the
huge, because there are more vegetation during the pre-flood, which helps increase lifespans. Yeah, destroying the huge vegetations pre-flood. It resulted in the post-floods severe and bad environmental conditions, and remove the hyperbaric chamber. When I say hyperbaric chamber, it's kind of like a symbol. It's not really a chamber that shields the earth. It's not like Michael Jackson's,
But yeah,
hyperbaric.
it was very different. The world was very different when in the creation, after the creation.
Yeah, the oxygen level was much better. Yeah, and the flood changed that. The hyperbaric chamber that covered the world was also removed, destroyed. And through that, after the flood, the mutation levels started to increase okay, and the mutation rates are much. Sorry, I lost. The post-flood environmental destruction, it started the high levels of mutation rates. I'm really tired. It resulted and it started the high levels of mutation rates of the animal kinds, which resulted in super speciation and unlocking of God's created heterozygosity implanted on animals. And when you combine the heterozygosity and homozygosity, which is a very technical thing, I cannot explain everything right now. Well, the word heterozygosity in our model also means, other than mutations causing rapid speciation, much rapid during post-flood because of the conditions. Okay. The word heterozygous, sorry, the word heterozygosity in our model can also mean adaptability potential God could put into animals to survive. Why do I say adaptive potential? Because we are predicting that most of the DNA is functional. So many parts of DNA will have adaptive potential, not due to mutation. But right now I'm using both scenarios: mutation rate and adaptability. Okay, and it was unlocked. Okay, when the animal during the post-flood world in the DNA of the animals. So this adaptive potential also, yeah, like I said, I'm repeating myself, contributed a lot to the super rapid speciation after the flood. So this process happened in 100, 500 to 1,000 years until the earth stabilized from catastrophic plate tectonics. Remember, in the Bible, it said those people were isolated in the Middle East only, so they're safe from the worldwide remnants of catastrophic plate tectonics. Okay? Even now, we can still see the remnants of catastrophic plate tectonics and even make predictions. Okay? So, the millions of species today formed 100, 500 to 1,000 or even more. Even 1,000 years after the flood. Then, speciation slows down due to entropy. Okay? Over time, slowly, slow and gradual, like your evolutionists love to say. Okay? I hope there's no theistic evolutionists there, because I'm at peace with them. Okay. And we even do observe some rapid speciation going on today, and that's predicted by creationists again. It's simple. Dr. Henry Morris or Dr. Duane Gish a long time ago predicted it, because they already recognized the problem even before. They recognized the problem that how can millions of species today and probably 20 more million species are not discovered came out from just two couples of some insects like that. Okay, that. And this data, I'm going to use the Bible if you allow me.
This data is also supported by the downing of the lifespan of biblical figures from living hundreds of years, hundreds upon hundreds of years, down to just 120 years and below due to poor environmental conditions and the removal of the hyperbaric chamber before the flood. Well, that is the nutshell of it. Most species formed, millions of them, post-flood, 100, 500, 1,000 years after the flood. And sympatric speciation I already explained, but I didn't explain completely, so maybe next time. And lastly, I really have to go, but lastly, if you guys were paying attention, in the descendants of these animals, this is now genetics. As I recall, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Snake, but I really have to go. You know the difference between the two, right? Shifting from heterozygosity to homozygosity would have been easy. What is homozygosity again? I forgot. Homozygosity is when the same kind of allele to form some kind of a variation. The homologous pair. Sorry. I really am weak at English. We speak Chinese here. Homologous pairs of chromosomes consist of either, never mind the meaning of homologous, sorry. Okay. Okay, again, going back, shifts from heterozygosity to homozygosity would have been easy. What is a homozygous trait? I forgot the DNA data about this. Okay, let's just make a shortcut here. I forgot the other data. Forgive me for spending time. The heterozygosity of the animals that came out of the ark would have been minimally affected. Okay, for sexually reproduced, a male and female could have produced a combined, let's say, 4 copies of nuclear DNA. These copies could have been very different, preserving a massive amount of speciation potential. So after the flood, the destruction of the world, Earth, animal migrations could begin again. All right, but humans are only in the Middle East, but animals went around the world. Okay. And this is actually related to sympatric speciation, which we went away from that issue. Okay, the animal migrations could begin again after the flood. So due to the small sizes and breeding, inbreeding, migration have had effects on the genetics of each animal. Effective conditions post-flood would be perfect for the shifts from heterozygosity to homozygosity. So heterozygosity to homo could have resulted in many new species. Each shift would have decreased the speciation resultant over time. Fewer heterozygotes, just so complex, I don't remember all the details. Fewer heterozygous sites would have smaller. Snake, are you following what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't
Because
have,
this is. I'm sorry for. I just forgot how to the. So so I gave a simple answer a while ago. This is the DNA answer that I just said. And uh, so, like I said, the heterozygosity to homozygosity shift could have resulted in many new species. With each shift would have decreased or reduced the speciation species potential of the resultant species. So fewer heterozygous sites would have meant fewer heterozygosity within individuals, which would have led to a decline in the rate of speciation per species that we see today. So that's it. So simple and complex answer, but my complex answer I think has many errors. I'm forgetting a lot of things. Forgive me.
well, my real problem with the post-flood speciation is, I mean, one, how did any freshwater species survive? And
What? Sorry.
how did,
Sorry.
like, there's a lot of problems with the animals
Yeah,
that
I know.
make it on the
I know.
ark. So, like, my main question with that would be, like, how do freshwater species survive? And then I have
Huh?
certain problems with how many kinds were actually
Why
on
are we
the ark.
going back to the flood? Fish surviving in salt water?
Freshwater fish can't survive in salt water.
Yeah.
Not most of them.
With time, they could adapt with time, though.
1 year. 1 year's enough for them to evolve.
What are you talking about? The salt water? Why are we going back to the flood?
So evolution can't happen over millions of years, but it can happen in 1 year.
You're assuming that the saltwater content was the same as what it is today.
Yeah, and I can
Either
even
the
use the
saltwater
saltwater
animals
argument
can
today
handle it.
against you. Okay, in saltwater fish,
Either the saltwater was watered down, and the saltwater animals wouldn't be able to survive in it, or the freshwater was salted up, and the freshwater animals wouldn't survive.
Yeah. How about all the animals that survived are living today, or if they didn't die since then?
Yeah, I mean, that's another problem, is why did God decide to kill his perfect creations?
That's beside the point. You first have to understand.
That's one of the main reasons I don't believe your myth.
You first have to understand that there is a God before you can judge his morality. Before you can judge his morality, you have to understand there is a God, a creator.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes, absolutely.
I'll have a whole discussion with you on morality if you would like.
Yeah, I mean, you
But
can't
that makes
judge
no
you
sense.
can't judge his morality if you don't know he exists. How are you
You
going to do
can't
that?
tell me his morality is good unless you can judge his morality.
You don't have to judge his morality. You can see
I
that he
do.
exists.
Otherwise, I don't know whether
first
he's
have to
evil or
see-
not.
You first have to see that he exists.
I don't see that.
Acknowledge.
So,
Well, then you're not looking at the evidence.
but it wouldn't matter if God existed or not, because I would still have the question of whether he's a good or an evil God.
science.
But first you have to accept that there is a God, a maker.
Why?
Because
I don't know how this is on
reality.
topic.
It's reality. All of reality.
Would you like to schedule a morality discussion so we can get back on the topic?
Yeah, you can schedule a morality discussion if you want, but you have to. If you don't understand that you have a maker, you're not going to understand anything.
Except science works no matter what religion you adopt. So I don't.
Yeah, science is what
I
you
don't
can
see
know.
how that follows.
Science is what you can know. Science is what the facts are.
Religion created science.
Science is not what the facts are. Science is a method of
Religion was created
Determining
by
what the facts are. Yeah.
science is
science.
a method.
Religion created science, a snake. 17th, 18th century. Go look into it.
It
Yeah.
absolutely didn't.
Besides the fact that we gave you science in the first place,
Yes, we gave you
You did.
science.
because science is knowing and knowing
And
the
then
truth.
you hijack science.
It's knowing the truth. That's what science is, and you guys perverted science and turned it into a mess.
No, science is
Do you
not
know
a
how
Christian
Turn it
thing.
into paganism. You turn it into idolatry and paganism. That's what you turn it into.
Nope. There's no
Absolutely.
pagan. There's no
Absolutely.
gods in science currently.
There's gods everywhere. What do you mean there's no gods? Everything
There
is
are no
power.
gods in science.
Everything is a power. Everything is
You just claimed
based
science is
on
pagan.
powers. Everything is based on the powers, on all kinds of power. Everything is determined by powers.
That's quite a fantasy world you live in.
No, it's
So
absolute
would
truth.
you
It's
like
absolute
to
truth.
get back to the topic, or
It's absolute truth. Yeah, well, yeah, we could
you
talk
can
about
declare
this.
absolute
Let's
truth
talk
all
about
day
the
long. It's not.
speciation.
I can say absolute truth too. It's not special.
Yeah, there's absolute truth. Only your maker can remake you. That's absolute truth. Okay, let's talk about genetics.
it.
We can. I like rabbit holes too. You want to go down a rabbit hole? Let's go down a rabbit hole.
I thought we were here for a specific topic, but whatever. I'm down for anything. As long
No,
as
you want to talk
the
about
mods
the
are okay with
speciation.
it.
You want to talk about the speciation, right?
Sure. I've
Well,
got another question.
Oh, you want to talk about something else now?
I've got a question about speciation.
Oh, well, I just wanted to say the way I see the speciation is that there are probably more kinds on the ark than one cat and maybe one dog. There might have been different kinds of cats and different kinds of dogs, and
Why are you saying that?
And the same thing with the weasels. There might have been different kinds of weasels too, which I believe is entirely possible because there are different kinds of weasels.
But at some point, if your criteria is too loose, then you will get too overcrowded.
Well, it doesn't really matter anyway because what was on the ark was on the ark anyway, so it doesn't matter anyway.
Stick to science.
Regardless of whether or not we understand it, it's still but we need to understand that there were different kinds of birds on the ark, so there could have been different kinds of cats too.
Yeah, but if you don't understand it, don't tell me what happened.
No, we can still say there was a flood. We do understand there was a flood. Absolutely, there was a flood.
We don't.
You're the one questioning about the speciation. We don't question the speciation.
What I'm questioning about speciation, okay, for example, is, well, I give you the example with the blind snake kinds, but Answers in Genesis says that there are 41 separate snake kinds. Now, I don't know why God loves snakes so much that he decided to create all these separate kinds, and these are only the ones that survived on the ark, because there are hundreds more snake species that would have died in the flood. So I don't know why God decided that those snakes, the snakes with legs, which represent transitional forms, all had to die. I'm not sure why all the transitional forms are the ones that died.
Well, I
fitting
can
the
say
evolutionary pattern exclusively. I don't know why there's 41 snake kinds and only one canid kind, one elephant kind, one horse kind.
I've personally seen a snake with legs that it didn't use.
No, you didn't.
I personally have seen a snake with legs that it did not use.
No, you haven't.
Yes, I have.
Not alive.
Yeah, it was in my hand.
What species was it? Was it a legless lizard?
No, it wasn't a lizard. It was a snake that slid around like a snake, and the legs were like useless.
What species was it?
It was just a snake, one of them small snakes.
Okay, so you picked up a lizard.
No, it wasn't a lizard.
It was. There are no snakes like that alive
today.
Well,
you can't say you've seen everything because I'm talking about the Amazon jungle.
Well, you should be reporting that as a new species, though, if that's true.
I'm screaming and yelling at the top of my lungs that I discovered a badger type of animal.
I don't know why you're not publishing this information.
Why are you interrupting me? Why are you interrupting me?
I don't know why you're not publishing this information. Then that seems
I'm
like pretty important
at the top
information.
of my lungs trying to get somebody's attention. That I got video of a badger with that's got a different fur pattern, a different color pattern. It's
Well,
on
you're gonna
my
have to
video. I
talk
got
to
a
someone
video.
else about that because I
got a video of it. Well, it's like who cares? Nobody's even interested.
I'm interested if you can actually prove it.
It's a video. It's on my channel. It
But-
used to be the first video that you would come across.
So it's a
probably still-
badger. Why didn't you document the snake?
because we didn't have phones. We didn't have smartphones at the time, and
Right.
I didn't even have a camera at the time. And
Did you know the different? Do you know how to tell the difference between one of those legless lizards and a snake?
I know does the legless lizard
That have reduced limbs that just hang there.
No, this had full limbs. It was full limbs that it didn't use, and it was sliding around in my hand.
There are plenty of lizards like that. They look like
Guys, I have to
snakes.
go. I have to
But
go.
it was a snake, though.
I have to go, guys.
All right, see you, Jeremy.
Sorry, Snake, for
But
everything.
I'll double check on
No,
that.
you're good, dude.
All right, Jeremy, it's nice talking to you. But I'll double check on that. I'll look at the legless lizards and see if it was the same. But it was a long time ago, and I had it in my hand, and I was looking at it, and I was showing people. And this one guy said, "Hey, let me see that." He grabbed it and put it in his pocket. I never saw it again.
Well, like, do you know how to tell the difference? Because like I have slides and slides and slides of these lizards versus snakes. If you want to take a look at them.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm going to look at them, but what I saw was definitely a snake with legs that it didn't use.
So like what I've got on my screen share right now is a lizard.
I can't see it yet. Wait a minute. Let me look at the other one. I don't see anything yet.
Whoever's controlling the flow. Oh wait, maybe I have to share my screen. That would definitely help. Okay, I'm sharing it. I think the moderators have to put it up.
You guys want to call it night? It's like 1 a.m.
Yeah, whatever you guys need to do.
We're deep in a discussion here.
I'm not going to hold you here at gunpoint.
All right, I'm just going to put this up. There. So maybe another 20 minutes or something. Maybe, yeah.
But I don't blame you guys because I work at night, so I have different kind of schedule.
There you go, Snake.
So this is actually a lizard.
I don't see it yet. Somehow this thing's. Do I have to refresh this thing?
Maybe.
I don't see it yet. It's just all I see is the ringworm.
Ringworm?
Oh, I can see something on the other one now. Yeah, it was nothing like that.
Okay.
It didn't have a head like that, and it didn't have legs like that. It had full legs, complete legs, and it didn't have a lizard head. It had a snake head. And
so how do you know it was a snake?
It didn't use a leg because it was well, like I said, it didn't look like that. It didn't have a head. For one thing, it didn't have a head like that. You could hardly even discern a head. And the legs were full legs, complete legs, like
Did it look like any of these?
Like what arms would I have? Arms and legs? It was like complete full legs.
Did it look like any of these?
Okay, hold on. No, not at all. No, because it was full. There were full legs, complete legs.
Some of these have complete legs.
There was no nose like that. It didn't have it didn't have a lizard nose. No, it didn't have. It was complete complete legs. It wasn't stubby legs.
So something more like this? Or like this?
I have to wait until it comes up on the other screen because I can't see it on my screen.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a lag. I mean, I'm just actually personally very interested in these, and not just because of my channel name. I just like snakes and lizards and stuff.
Yeah, but it was definitely a snake with legs that it didn't use. I mean, that, it was a profound thing, that I saw. It wasn't a big one. It was a small one, but
well, that would be very interesting to actually see.
Yeah,
that something like that.
Matt Bond says he's not buying my story. I wonder if he buys the story about my the badger that I saw that science hasn't seen yet or documented with the head. The head and the neck is white and the rest of the body is black.
It's not that I don't believe you, but I just
got video.
Can't make anything of it until I see it.
I got video of it on my channel.
All right.
But it's hard to see, but it's because there's a wide angle lens I had. But I thought, I actually say, if you listen to it, I got to turn up the volume. But I actually said, oh, it's a skunk, a badger, because I didn't know what it was. But I could clearly see the head and the neck had the white fur, and the shoulder, from the shoulders onto the tail, and had a bushy tail, was black. So it's definitely a different kind of badger, and it was the kind of badger that, not badger, weasel that stays on the ground like a honey badger. It doesn't jump to the trees. It just stays on the ground, because there is another kind of weasel in South America that jumps for the trees or goes from tree to tree and doesn't run on the ground. The one I saw stays on the ground.
Pretty amazing, man. So I'm probably gonna call it here. I appreciate everyone in the chat coming tonight. So we can, probably, if anyone wants to watch if they miss it, just go back and replay it or whatever. You guys want to end with something? Just go ahead and in your closing statements. We're gonna call it.
Well, if Snake wants to continue on my channel, maybe it could.
Yeah.
I gotta get going to bed too tonight, but we can do something.
Well, you guys have lives.
Yeah.
You guys have lives.
Yeah.
No, I just have it different. I go to work tomorrow, or today, actually.
Yeah, it would be nice sometimes, I think, to have a night job.
Yeah, what's nice is when you work 4 days and have 3 days off. That's nice.
Yeah.
But you have
I
to
usually work 6 days and have 1 day off.
But you have to sleep a day to catch up on your sleep, so you lose the day anyway.
Yeah. So, my main problem, I think, at least going off of the creationist sources I can find, is where they draw the line for how to fit things on the ark. Because it seems to me like, they say there's one horse kind, and they admit that there's a lot of variation in that kind. And yet they separate the smaller animals into dozens of different groups, it seems to me like the only reason is because... Does it really
bother you? Does it really bother you a lot?
Yeah, because I'm trying to understand where you guys think evolution stops.
It doesn't
and why there's an inconsistent standard with baronology. So the entire horse kind is one kind, but they vary more than all of the lizard kinds. It's just that there are more species in each lizard kind, so AIG would be forced to break them up into more kinds, because otherwise that would mean not just super fast speciation, but speciation once a year.
Well, lizards have a lot of variation, and
Well, not within the kinds that they're describing, actually.
it doesn't really bother me that much. Because everything living today is simply what survived the global flood.
It doesn't bother you that they don't actually have a consistent standard. Excuse me, they don't have an actual consistent standard for how they can tell they're separate kinds, that they're only just trying to make the numbers fit the story. That doesn't bother you?
No, because everything, like I said, everything living today survived the global flood.
And I'm also doubly confused as to why God wouldn't want the majority of his creations to survive the flood. But perhaps that's a different conversation.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell Snake this real quick. I think there's different viewpoints on that in the faith. Not all of us are global floodists, so it's something to check out.
Yeah, we don't all know everything, but even I would disagree with many of some of the points of the the split in the Earth shooting up to the moon and all that stuff. I find that I think that is split after the global flood, 100 years after the global flood. But
yeah, there's a bunch of nuanced beliefs. Some people are limited flooders, some are global, some so. Is that it, guys? You guys have something else to say, or you got want to?
I was just gonna say, I think that the most impressive God would be one who could build in created heterozygosity into a single cell and just let it go from there. That would be the most impressive to me.
You mean like a top-down evolution? You mean
putting everything
in the first,
all the information that all of life needs to evolve from a single cell. That would be more impressive than individually creating separate kinds.
That would be the only evolution that I accept, but the evolution that you're trying to tell us is that it's bottom up.
Well, whenever I argue evolution with theists, I just assume theistic evolution in the first place. So, because really, all I'm personally concerned with is young Earth creationism. Old Earth creationism is fine with me scientifically, but
it's a science,
not like theologically.
It's the science you're worried about, right? Then you're worried about being contrary to science.
I suppose.
Yeah, probably.
And I would like to know where the limit of adaptation lies.
I just know there's a lot of things that science has wrong. What you call science, they have a lot wrong, and they aren't looking. For one thing, if you want to learn science, you have to first study history in the Bible. If you know everything about history, everything about the Bible, and genealogies and where we came from, then you can start learning about science, and maybe you'll learn something. But if you don't know the background and the basis, you're not going to understand science very well.
Okay, so how do other cultures do science?
Other cultures don't really do science.
Okay. Other cultures don't do science.
Not really, unless they learn it from us, or learn it from, schools that teach them science.
That's
the Arabs used to have science until they said it was evil, and then they stopped doing science.